Okay, I'm Calling to order this meeting of the school board for a work session on September 17th. Dr. Gupta, the chair, is not here, and so as vice chair, it's my duty to try to coordinate the meeting. The first item on our agenda would be electronic participation, but we don't have anyone who needs that. Everybody except Dr. Gupta is here, and he's not able to participate electronically. Next item is a Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'll please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, I love microphones. Okay, so the next item is to approve our agenda. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
To move.
Can I make a motion to amend the agenda?
Yes, you can.
Okay. In the interest of, because this is a heavy agenda, I would like to see if we could move F1 and G2 to a later meeting, so that the principals can, and then we can
Well,
go to the...
for F1, people from that presentation are
Are
physically.
they
They're
here?
here,
Oh, they're
yes.
here, okay, I wasn't sure if they were here.
And
So they just said, okay.
G2,
Crisis communication,
so a motion to amend the agenda is on the table.
Second.
Any discussion of the motion to amend the agenda?
Which ones do you want to amend again?
He
well, I
wants-
was saying, I was saying F1 and G2, but we have Liberty here, so I
Okay,
didn't know they would be here tonight, so I would,
all right.
So you want to postpone G2,
yes.
which is the crisis communication discussion. You want to postpone that till our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the motion, to postpone the crisis communication discussion to our next meeting. So any discussion of that? Okay, would you
Did you
please
say-
call the roll?
Did you say why?
It's a lot of stuff on here, and I want to make sure the principals, that's why I was going to do it. That's why I was saying F1, but they're here. I want to make sure the principals have enough time to give thorough presentations, and if we have any questions, that we would feel comfortable asking them, since they've come out of their way to be here. That was just my...
Any other questions or discussions before we vote on the motion to amend? No? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Gilio?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes?
Mrs. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie?
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Okay, so now we're back to the motion to approve the now amended agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the
Motion.
agenda as amended?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Gilio?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes?
Mrs. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie?
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is item E, School Board Advisory Reports. What we need to do tonight is to approve the membership of the School Health Advisory Board. Now, you see 10 names listed here. After I sent those to the clerk, it was pointed out to me that I left 2 names off. So I want to add to the list of 10 names Dr. Sarah West, and then the last one would be Janelle Smith. There's no distinction between those individuals and all the others. Just a clerical error on my part. I neglected to include them when I sent this to the clerk. Let me say that the applications to serve on all of our advisory committees were provided to the board in an email from Dr. Edwards back in August on the 20th. And so that's where these names came from. I combed through this list carefully and actually contacted a few people from last year's School Health Advisory Board who had not indicated they wanted to continue to confirm that that was their intent. And so I've combed through this pretty carefully. All of these names, with two exceptions, were on last year's board and have asked to continue. The two exceptions are the two that are marked new, or new people this year. There is a legal cap on the size of this committee of 20 members, but we're well under that at 12. So there's no problem with that. The issue here for us to act on is whether we want to approve these as the members for this year's School Health Advisory Board. So,
I'll make a motion to approve those members.
okay,
Second.
okay, any discussion? If not, please call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and so before we move on, I just wanted to comment that at our July 23rd board meeting, we did, the board did approve a charge to the School Health Advisory Board to consider the issue of bullying this year, and they have asked me to attend their meeting on the 25th to talk to them about that charge, and so I will be doing that. Anyone else who's interested, of course, is welcome to come to that too. All right, next item of business is principal school goal presentations, and I'll turn this over to Dr. Edwards.
Actually,
No, it's Liberty.
Liberty University.
will be.
Yes, you're right. Sorry. See, I'm good at administrative oversights.
Okay.
I'm glad you're all here. I apologize for overlooking that. Liberty University.
Yep. So from time to time, we bring some of our community partners here to share with our board and our community some of the things that we are doing together. You remember we had the Regional Business Alliance with Megan Lucas and Tori Gilmorton talk about the Educator Workforce Academy. They were here a couple of weeks ago to share that. Tonight we have our partners from Liberty University who are going to share with us some of the things that we are doing with them. We've been working with Liberty for a while. I'm going to ask Ms. Pugh to just talk a little bit about some of the things that we have been doing, and then I'm going to invite up Dr. Dempsey and Dr. Riley from Liberty University to talk about some of the expanded things that we're doing with the university and Lynchburg City Schools. So, Ms. Pugh, just really quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Edwards. Just want to say we are grateful to continue the partnership with Liberty University. I do want to call attention to one of our members of the curriculum and instruction staff, Sarah Likens-Kissel. She has worked not only with Liberty, but with some of the other universities and colleges to work on placements for practicum and student teaching with those universities. But this year, Dr. Riley has worked with Sarah, and we have placed over 50 practicum students from Liberty in Lynchburg City Schools. And that gives them an opportunity to come into the classroom before their student teaching. Some of these may be student teachers, but before their student teaching to really get a sense of what the classroom is like and to work with students and teachers. And also, they may be talking about this, but also want to give a shout out to Whitney Boyd, who is, working with our community engagement piece, and she's been connected with them this year to offer some different opportunities. So I will ask Dr. Dempsey and Dr. Raleigh to come up and give us a little bit of update about our partnership this year.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. My name is Rod Dempsey. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Liberty University. And we've been working with LCS for a while now. I don't know who's in charge of that, but if you scroll down just a little bit on that, actually, that's okay. There's another page that you can go to, and LCS is one of the buttons that you can choose for Christian service. And every student at Liberty University has to do 20 hours, it's like a sentence, 20 hours of service in the community. And so we've been working with Dr. Edwards, Dr. Pugh, and Whitney Boyd to try and increase the number of students that we have. Dr. Edwards and I, we go back a little ways. She brought me into a meeting a few years ago, A bunch of pastors were there. She asked all of the principals that were there, what do you need? What do you need? They all said the same thing. We need reading mentors, we need lunchroom buddies, and we need playground buddies. So Christian service is what we're looking at as to help out with the lunchroom and then also the playground. But as we expand that, we hope to have hundreds of students involved in the Lynchburg school system, as much as they can handle, because we want to be a good and faithful partner to our community. Dr. Raleigh.
And Don Raleigh, I'm the Dean at the School of Education, and as Dr. Pugh pointed out, we are very blessed to have our students be able to perform practicums in your school settings. We also have student teachers doing that. We all know the situation where we have a shortage of teachers, so having our teachers be able to go into those settings, hopefully encourage them, they get a good sample of what that's going to look like, and you guys are providing an opportunity. This opportunity was a win-win across the board. When we started talking about this, our students are becoming teachers. They're learning how to teach reading and how to do special ed and how to do different things like that. So if they're going to have to do 20 hours, we've challenged our students to serve in Lynchburg City Schools. Let's see if we can do some things where they get some experiences in a school setting, but it also helps pour into your setting. And the logistics of how Whitney Boyd and the teams have set things up have been just amazing. So the administration really appreciate it. I just appreciate the commitment you guys have to our students and to the students you guys serve. We want to come alongside and help in any way we can, and we're just thankful to be a part of that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Question? Sure. Do you handle any sort of background checks on the students before they?
All of our students have to go through a background check as a part of their being in the School of Ed, so that's.
As having your own police force, do you do it through your system or through?
We have a system that they'll do a full background check as a part of one of our gates in the School of Education. So they'll actually go through, and it's beyond even the School of Liberty's University's system. We used to have to do the fingerprinting there. Now we have it actually in-house, so they can do the fingerprinting. It's sent off to a national database piece, and they do a full background check before they're released as a part of our background piece.
Would you be willing to help us after the recent event with that one fella having missed his background check?
Well, hey, I was a former superintendent. I know what a challenge that thing
Sure.
looks like. So anything we can do, of course, you guys are well equipped and doing well with whatever, we're always.
I know things slip through the cracks. Sounds like yours is much more elaborate, much more
Well,
extensive.
with ours, we're catching them real early. So as they're going through, and honestly, when I was a superintendent, you have volunteers coming in, you have a lot of different things. You guys have a well set up screening, because I've been in a couple of your sites, and I mean, they're going through, as soon as we go there, they have to get a badge, you have to get screened. And so those are hopefully outliers as far as anything we've seen, but we'll definitely do anything we can to assist and help.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Also, all right. Would you be available, the students, to help with after-school tutoring at the community centers?
That's actually.
Sure. I may be able to address that. We're working on some after-school stuff. We're already working with Dr. Wilder. We have several of our students going over there at Jubilee as well. But in the future, we're looking at quite a few after-school programs and hope to be able to implement that. With Dr. Costin and Chancellor Falwell, they have a new outlook, really wanting to serve the community. And so we're looking at ways that we can do that. And we do believe that we can serve LCS in other areas. We talked about that in our meeting as well. We have information technology degrees. We have English as a second language as a major at Liberty University. We have lots. We have 700 majors. So we're just trying to look at our community and say, as Dr. Raleigh said, how can we come alongside and help out?
Yeah, K through 12 would be great.
Yeah, and Girls on the Run is actually one of the choices right now, which is kind of an after-school program. So that is an option we're already looking at.
Yes, that's a really good one.
Any other questions?
I have one. Was there any programs in mind that are focused toward boys, like Girls on the Run? I'm really impressed with the whole Girls on the Run theme and what they do and how great they do. But is there something like that that we can reach our boys?
Well, I'll give you one illustration. We found out this summer that the Youth Football League, Lynchburg United, needed some help, and Pastor Jonathan got involved and helped them. So we are looking at lots of ways that we can help out, and athletics would be one of those. Not only do we have a full athletic department with all kinds of Division I athletics, we have a full complement of club sports as well. And so we are looking at those and hope to be able to continue assisting. I'll give you one illustration. Last night, I was at Heritage High School with Lynchburg United Football League. And we brought one of our offensive linemen over there to talk with the kids. And then he ended up staying extra and going up to the line coach and helping these just little kids, helping them to understand what offensive line work looks like. We're hoping to expand that.
Would part of that be the FCA? Because I know they're short on a few leaders right now.
I'm working with FCA right now, and we have plans to expand that in the schools as well.
Awesome, that's great.
If you could wave your education wand or yardstick, what would you like to see in partnership with LCS in the future?
I think we're actually working that way. We had a meeting with Dr. Edwards and Dr. Pugh, and we understand the logistics. I've been on the other side of this, and being a superintendent, having people come in is amazing and great, but how that works and what the logistics look like. We've even having, our students being able to leave, get parking back at Liberty is a challenge there. We want to be open to however we can come alongside, but we also understand that you guys have cultures and buildings, you have logistics issues that we have to make sure background checks. So we're going to work with you any way we can within the confines of what your culture and what your administration and what your teachers are willing to do. Taking on a new teacher as a student teacher in a practicum, for some teachers, that's a challenge. That's not, that gets them out of, it may be another person to help, but it's also someone else you have to manage. So there has to be a willingness, and we want to make sure we're sensitive to your culture and what you guys need. But we're open to whatever. I've been there, and coming out of COVID, I ran a school district through that. Those are tough situations to deal with. And how you guys are responding is you're trying to do everything you can, and they've been open to that, and we're willing to help as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but any way we can help, we would.
All right. We are gearing a lot of things towards CTE these days, so keep that in mind as we go forward.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now, next on our agenda is the principal school goal presentations, right?
Certainly. So before I even transition to that, a lot of the work that we are able to do with Liberty University, University of Lynchburg, Randolph College, CVCC, you name it, is really due to the commitment of our building principals. Many of them are here today. But as you know, there are no children in this building, so we don't really serve kids here in the downtown office. Our principals do a great job of taking practicum students, volunteer students, and working with them and giving them that experience. So it really is a great partnership. It would not work without the building leaders saying yes to a lot of things, sometimes more things than they have the ability to manage, but they are always opening their doors to those experiences. So I want to thank them as well, and thank you all for definitely being here. And speaking of building leaders, we decided to do something a little different this year, keeping with the theme of minutes matter. So we're doing short and sweet, and I gave each building administrator a 3 to 5 charge, 3 to 5 minutes, to really do more of an instructional leadership, come and talk about real quick school goals and things that they're doing in their buildings. Specifically for the purpose of this presentation, we had 2 major areas that we were looking at the elementary level, because we just finished our division literacy plan. There is a big focus on literacy and the work that we're doing. So I've asked my elementary principals to really take a look at literacy and a deep dive into their data in terms of some of the work that they're doing there. At the secondary level, you may remember last summer that we had at the University of Lynchburg a program for our male students called Scholar Identity Program, where African American male students came and spent a week learning more about themselves and their self-efficacy and goal setting and everything that they can do to maximize their potential. And as a spring off of that, we were also at the University of Lynchburg when the students were there. The secondary level is looking at Black student achievement. So they are focusing on goals within their schools related to that. Now, I will say that to say that is not the only thing that they are focusing on, but it is the only thing we're going to be talking about tonight as they give their quick presentations. So what they're going to do, we split them into 2 cohorts. So you have about 8 of them, or 8 of them tonight, and maybe 10 the next time, and then they'll be back in the January and February to give you an update of where they are. Each of them is going to give you a quick 3 to 5 minutes conversation, the old-fashioned type where we have eye contact, so you will not be looking at a screen. You'll actually be talking with them, and I'm going to call them up. The one thing that I will ask, and I know you're going to have questions, and just so that I can manage everybody's time appropriately, is that we let them all give their initial 3 to 5. So if you have something to write when you want to ask a specific question, you can when we cycle back. And then we'll cycle back to take questions on anything that you may want to ask. But for our community, you may know the principal in your school, but you may not know the principal in all of our schools. So this is a great opportunity to meet all of the building leaders. Again, the second half will be here in October. So as you come up, just ask that you introduce yourself and your school, and then I'll start clicking on that Minutes Matter on 3 to 5 on the important stuff. So we are going to start with Ms. Lisa Lee and Adam Binya.
Good evening. We're excited to be here tonight, so thank you for having us. I'm Lisa Lee, the principal at Sheffield Elementary.
I'm Adam Benyo, the assistant principal.
We'd like to just take a few moments to share our focus for Sheffield Elementary for the 2024-25 school year.
We are proud to celebrate our school's ongoing success in maintaining accreditation.
And we did provide a little handout just with a few visuals. The reports that you've seen already showcase our progress made in this last year, where we were really focused on chronic absenteeism and our science scores, and we're happy to report that we are at a level 1 with all of those at this point.
At Sheffield, we have placed a strong emphasis on improving achievement gaps in English through targeted remediation. We are introducing several strategies to bridge this gap. Tonight, we will focus on 2 key areas: parental engagement and student engagement.
And then on the back here, our objective this year with English is to reduce the failure rate for English achievement gaps by 10% or more. And actively engaging our parents will be crucial, especially for students facing achievement gaps. So the following strategies are things that we're going to work to implement this school year. Teachers will be making at least 1 positive contact with each parent per quarter to highlight student progress. Administrators, we are going to be following up with parents within 2 weeks of any referral or suspension due to behaviors. We're going to offer parental involvement opportunities to equip our parents with tools to support their child's education effectively. We offer various resources for parents in the building. They're able to come and check out books from the library and interact with us in school activities during the day and in the evenings. We will utilize multiple communication channels: Class Dojo, Tiger News, which is a parent newsletter, School Messenger, and we also use old-fashioned phone calls to parents, and we will build a positive social media presence this year to strengthen our school community. And by creating a collaborative environment, we aim to empower students and their families for greater success.
We are also committed to enhancing student engagement by implementing several key strategies. Teachers will conduct one-on-one goal-setting sessions with students in English. Data analysis will guide targeted remediation efforts, including spiral reviews and our all-in intervention initiatives. Additionally, we will increase our focus on vocabulary development and content sharing to build background knowledge, helping students make meaningful connections with new learning.
We believe that further engaging parents and students will continue to improve attendance, decrease behavioral issues, and enhance academic performance. So thank you for listening to us tonight. We look forward to coming back next semester to share an update. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next up from Bass, Monica Hendricks.
Good evening, everyone. I am Monica Hendricks, the proud principal of Bass Elementary, the only year-round school in the area. So tonight I'm going to share Bass's 3-year trend data. I like to look at it across the span of those 3 years to really focus on overall strengths and areas of concern. So in looking at our reading and math SOL data trends, we've been consistent for the past 3 years and met the state requirements. We've been in the 80th percentile for reading and for math for the past 3 years. This past year, we also met our achievement gap for both reading and math, which is an improvement, so something that we worked really hard on last school year. As far as science, that's an area that we continue to experience difficulty. The past 2 years, we've scored 64% both times. So we are continuing to focus on that, which I'll share with you some strategies for that in a minute. And then our attendance rate for this past school year was 13%, which was an improvement from the 22-23 school year. So we have two school-wide goals that we submitted to the Department of Ed through our Comprehensive School Improvement Plan. The first one, of course, is with science, and we want to meet that 70th percentile pass rate for SOLs. And our second one is a 10% reduction in the failure rate for one of our subgroups in the area of math. Of course, we also have the Virginia Literacy Act. So we have a third goal that's school-wide. All teachers have a literacy goal. I have a literacy goal. And we're just looking to ensure that we maintain our reading SOL performance and ensure that we're implementing the Literacy Act requirements and meeting that set by the state. So we have several action steps. I'm not going to talk about all the action steps. I just wanted to highlight a few. So there's 3 that really focus on all 3 subject areas for reading, for math, for science. The first one, and I really think this has made a difference in our school, is having the weekly collaborative team meetings, or POCs. So we have those twice a week, all 4 subject areas, and the teachers are able to unpack standards, create common assessments, analyze student data, look at student work, and we really talk about interventions, what's working, what's not working, and determine next steps. And that is something that I really do feel that that's made a difference with us. This current school year in reading, they have been working a lot, thoughtfully planning, new benchmark reading program, and just being targeted and intentional with what those small groups look like based on the VALs and SOL data. So our second action step is being targeted and intentional with our instructional practices, activities, and making sure that the lesson plans and activities meet the rigor of the standard. The third one, which is unique to BAS, is utilizing our intercessions effectively. So looking at student data, identifying students with specific skill deficits, ensuring we have activities and things that are geared to that specific skill so that we can lessen those learning gaps for students. And then the last action step is directly related to science, and that it's been a huge push. Our teachers have been working diligently to ensure that students are engaged in science and engineering practices by creating models, designing experiments, collecting and analyzing data, and it's happening K-5. And it's been awesome to see the kids actually being engaged in that and being able to apply their learning. So that is all for my data, but I just wanted to close with, I think it's very important, I think everyone behind me would agree, that academic achievement is very important. I know that's something that the state and everyone looks at, but just at BAS, and I know my colleagues would agree, that we look at the whole child and ensuring that the behavioral and social emotional needs are also met. So that's something that I just also want to brag on BAS, because I think we do an excellent job of making sure the students' needs are met, not only academically, but also socially. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Ms. Dominique Foster and Jason Shelton from Perrymont.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dominique Foster, principal of Perrymont Elementary School.
And I'm Jason Shelton. I am the assistant principal.
So we are here, we're going to talk about our successes, and we're going to talk about what we're working on. So in regards to improving our literacy, what's really standing out for us at Perrymont Elementary School is vertical alignment. Vertical alignment to our Virginia Department of Education Standards of Learning objectives. And we have a school-wide document that all of our teachers have poured their heart and soul into to make sure that we have common strategies, definitions, and we're speaking the same language in our building when it comes to those standards. This is our second year for after-school professional learning sessions. We invite you to come out every third Wednesday from 3:30 to 5. We are really looking at that document and really looking at what the standards say for our SOLs. Our professional learning communities, just like Ms. Hendricks just stated, PLCs, we see a lot of our work being done there on Tuesdays for reading and on Thursdays for math and every third Wednesday of the month for science. We invite you to come out every Tuesday for this, every Thursday and every third Wednesday from 9:25 to 3:05 to really see our teachers working per grade level, pouring into that data and looking at what's working and what's not. And speaking of PLCs, when we talk about that, we're looking at how we're tiering our students. So we have a setup in our coaches room where students are listed by their name. So every teacher, anybody who comes there, you'll see the student's name. They're color-coded by teacher, so we can see the progress and we can see the work that we still have left to do. And so with PLCs, our teachers engage in professional discourse about the following evidence-based questions. How will we respond when students do not learn it? What instructional practices create the best outcomes for our students? How will we extend the learning for students who are already proficient? This is the work. This is the work that we are doing, and this is what really we feel is moving the needle for us here with reading, and we'll continue to increase that. But I have to highlight our partnerships that help make and help support us in this area and all of our academic areas. Speaking of Hope Kids to College, having our kids write with the Promise Pals program. This is the second year we did the Kids to College with them. BWXT coming in to read to our students and doing presentations for science. Our PTO, who's really increased our parental involvement with our readathon program that takes place in the spring. Fort Hill United Methodist Church, our volunteers who are coming in doing so many things, but reading with our students, helping with our fresh fruit and vegetable program. Generations in Greatness, providing one-on-one tutoring with our students. Heritage High School, who have their carpentry class, has partnered with Perrymont Elementary School. Liberty University Tutors for all in, and just coming in, assisting in our building. University of Lynchburg also being a partner with our readathon program. And we have so many more partners. This is just a few that we have here to name. And then at the end of each month, we do a fun monthly Fun Friday program for our students who've worked so hard. So for September, our Fun Friday initiative or incentive will be popsicles at the picnic tables that Heritage High School carpentry students built for us. So we are very excited by our collaborations and all the partnerships, but all of the work that our teachers, our staff, our coaches, just coming in and really looking at, how are we responding to students who do not get it? What are we doing about that? What are the outcomes? And Mr. Shelton's going to talk about some things we are working on a little more in depth.
So to add on with that, the discussion with vertical alignment, we do that with all of our grade levels. We do that through pre-K through our 5th grade teachers. We do that for reading, and this year we are working with math. This is where we come together. We're working on common language, common vocabulary, and common definitions to use from the time that they're in pre-K through 5th grade and even further, because we do even bring up our 6th grade standards to make sure that this is not stopped when they walk out of our doors. This also gives us an opportunity to talk about cross-curricular opportunities so that we're not just stagnant within one core subject at a time. This utilizes our Virginia Department of Education standards and the LCS logs that have provided for us. And we invite you to attend as Ms. Foster said, on Tuesdays. We meet from 8:30 to about 3:05 in the afternoon. We have PLCs where we work on that reading process, making sure that that vertical alignment is used in our classrooms, as well as to gather data and talk about reading strategies that will be common throughout our building. We also have something called a lesson study team, where we are including all of our teachers as well in segments. This is a teacher-led group that researches, plans, and observes other teachers, their fellow teachers within the classroom, to increase the efficiency and the implementation of best teaching practices. And for my understanding and from my experience, we learn best from each other. So we put them together so that we learn together as teachers and as a building at Perrymont. During our PLCs, we work together to create common assessments across our grade levels so that what we are seeing in one class, we can compare to other classes to see where are our strengths and where are our weaknesses and where do we best support our students as well as our teachers in our building. We utilize Edulastic data as well as benchmark data for our math, our reading, our science, and our Virginia Studies information. And we utilize the IXL program and our strand data that we get from it to help us remediate in reading, math, and science.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are our 3 elementary schools for tonight, and we're going to transition into some middle school principals. So I'm going to ask, who's up next, Dr. Dills, to come up. And I don't know if you have Ms. Thomas with you.
No, she did. She did my back work. She's my muscle behind everything.
All right.
Good evening, and thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. And to kind of also jump on what Ms. Hendricks said, I really do think that what I'm presenting tonight has to do with the whole student mentality. Lincoln Middle School took their data to a whole new level in 22-23 summer. We looked at not only the chronic absenteeism, we looked at why kids were failing tests, why kids were failing their do-nows, why they were doing what they were doing as middle schoolers. What we found out is that we needed to not change the student, not change the teachers, but we needed to change the system. Imagine that. So what we did is we jump with me to the year 23-24. We actually redefined what we were doing at middle school. We defined the Rosette Academy. The Rosette Academy was a 6th grade academy that actually took every single student and gave them a personalized learning plan. It actually gave them an approach that the transition to 6th grade was going to give the kids power to own their own learning, as well as a voice to tell us what they were good at, what they weren't good at, how they wanted to learn, why they didn't want to learn, where they wanted to learn. It also took the 6th grade off of a block schedule. It allowed these kids to come from the elementary school where they were having English, math, science, and social studies every day. That's what we did. The kids went to a 5-period day on 65 minutes. Also in that, they wrote their own personalized learning plans. They sat with the teacher in their content area and were able to identify the areas that they felt like they were strong, where they felt like that they were weak, how they wanted to learn that information. And so when they got into the classroom and teachers were presenting, they also had an opportunity every Friday or alternating Friday to say to the teacher, hey, I like that, that was wonderful. Hey, I didn't like that, maybe we should do it differently, or could you teach it to me in a different way? So when we're talking about the data and achievement, we actually gave the kids a voice. We gave them the option and also kind of choice with that. The purpose of it was to build an educational support system for kids that was both academically and emotionally supported for them through the 6th grade by allowing them to foster the belief that their abilities and talents could improve because they had control over it. So you can look at a big bad number, but the reality of the situation, if Johnny or Susie didn't think that they could do it, they couldn't do it. If you gave them the opportunity to step on the teacher's back and we threw them over the fence, they achieved because they were able to fly. The strategies that we used, not only with the personalized learning, but we also broke up 200 kids. So English, math, science, and social studies had 2 teams, both a green team and a yellow team. That meant that those 4 teachers had those kids, they owned them. They owned their parents, they owned their grandparents, they owned the good, the bad, they owned their own attendance. So if a green team child was struggling in math, a green team social studies teacher could help them in math. That was just what it was. We owned everything about them. When we talked about why they weren't there, the green team called the parents and said, hey, I'm Johnny's teacher, remember me? We all 4, 5, 6, 7 teachers met with you on Tuesday to talk about Johnny's issues. That also made the parents feel very invested in what their children were doing because we invested in the parents. And so therefore we immediately got community partnerships and we got buy-in from parents. Not only that, the kids also felt like that we had immediate pipeline to their parents. So all of a sudden, behavior seemed to improve. Imagine that. The design of this, when we looked at it for our school goal, was to increase student achievement both in math and reading, also to increase their attendance, and also have some type of parent community liaison, so when we were struggling. What we saw is that after that school year, our discipline went down 36%. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you test scores because the reality of the situation is the minute that we had kids there and their behavior was better, they were sitting in front of teachers, they were getting rock solid instruction. Now, everything that my colleagues so far have said, we are doing PLCs, we're doing professional learning, but what we felt like was important at the time, it was time for us to stop focusing on master plan of what scores and achievement needed to be, and we needed to listen to what our kids needed. And all of a sudden, At the end of last year, we did a survey. We had a 95% rate of children saying that they liked school, where in the very beginning, when we did that survey, only 21% said that they liked school. The second thing is 100% of our students showed that they had one or more people in the building that they trusted and that they said that they could tell something that they were struggling with or being social conflict or something like that. They had an adult in the building that were willing to listen to them. So when our final report card came out, we absolutely achieved higher at a rate of excuse me, let me get it. Our GAP group went from, in English, we went from a 35% pass rate to a 55% pass rate, and in math, we went from a 32% pass rate to a 43% pass rate. Now, some of us would say, well, that's still not good enough. Well, guess what we're doing? Pause for a minute, because next school year, you'll also hear we are replicating this in 7th grade. So we took the yellow and green team, and we are now making a gold and emerald team. And we had our 6th grade teachers go through every single thing this summer. They trained my 7th grade teachers, and so immediately teachers got buy-in because it was a teacher telling them what to do. It wasn't me, because I'm not the boss, because my teachers knew what these kids needed. And now when my 7th grade teachers have a question or a struggle with a current 7th grade, they don't come to administration. They walk right down to the 6th grade team and say, how did you get this child to achieve? Or this parent I can't get in touch with. And like that, we're able to do it. What we did is we took the system and we kind of turned it on its head because we listened to the kids. What I'm telling you is, if at the trending rate that we have here at Lincoln Middle School with 6th grade, if I double, because I'll now have 66% of my kids instead of 33% of my kids on this trend, we will double it. So I'm hoping right now our discipline is way down, and our current grades, just straight grades, not any state reporting, our current grades are better than they have ever been in our building. And when kids are not achieving, when we ask why, they have a list of suggestions that we need to do.
Here. All right. Next up is our 2nd middle school for the night, and that will be Dr. Lee, and Ms. Bragg is also here. Yes. Dr. Edwards, Deputy Superintendents Pugh and Woodica, and our elected school board, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to represent Sandusky Middle School, home to 558 students, including the LCS Adapted Curriculum District-wide program. I am a neutrally proud principal, and I also have with me Catherine Bragg, Assistant Principal, and we are confident in our motto that all students will thrive. We fully believe in this work and that all of our students can find success within our educational environment. Last May, Sandusky Middle School saw significant academic gains, including a 12.4% improvement in English and a 14% improvement in math. We narrowed the achievement gap in English by 15% among our Black and economically disadvantaged students. And our students with disabilities worked to decrease the achievement gap by 17.7%. In math, the overall academic achievement gap from last May in comparison to the 22-23 school year shows that our Black students scored 13.9% higher, our economically disadvantaged students scored 17% higher, and our students with disabilities performed at 31.8% improvement over their subgroup performance during the 22-23 school year to further narrow the achievement gap. We also saw a 12.5% achievement gap improvement among our white students subgroup. We noted a 10% improvement in chronic absenteeism and believe that this is an overall contributing factor. Our current accreditation status is accredited with conditions. While we acknowledge the efforts the efforts of our staff and our students, and are committed to continuing progress to ensure that our students are equipped with what they need to be successful beyond our building, we recognize that continual work is required in several areas. This spring, we analyzed data through a needs assessment and developed a comprehensive school support plan. In our needs assessment, we identified underperformance in English and math and recognized the need for student skill development, teacher professional learning opportunities in data analysis, and improved instructional delivery. In our comprehensive school support plan, we focus on barriers to success.
We use this information within the plan to make several building commitments, including the implementation of an aligned curriculum, a school-wide data-driven instructional framework, and improvement in the areas of co-teaching, differentiation, and scaffolding practices across all content areas. For the 24-25 school year, we've already started using professional learning communities to address student learning gaps as well as to extend their understanding. We've also engaged teacher leaders in summer training to lead their departments effectively. With support from our School Improvement Grant, we have purchased resources to help all teachers in the areas of student motivation, critical thinking, co-teaching best practices, differentiation, and effective reading instruction. As we celebrate our academic gains, we remain focused on addressing areas of need and achievement gaps for all of our students. Our commitment to data-driven instruction, professional development, and collaboration will ensure that every student at Sandusky can thrive. Our school culture has flourished with stronger staff collaboration where educators work closely to support student success. Students are celebrated for their achievements, both big and small, creating a positive atmosphere. Families are included monthly in activities to help build a community that champions the growth and well-being of every child. At Sandusky Middle School, we have created an all-in culture, and we remain dedicated to providing the resources and support needed to foster success for each of our students. Thank you so much.
All right. We're going to transition again to a mixed blend of middle and high school from our Fort Hill Community School with Dr. Glover.
Got to raise this up a little bit. All right. Good evening, school board members, and greetings from the Fort Hill Phoenix faculty, staff, and students. If we haven't met, I'm Chris Glover, the principal of Fort Hill Community School. As an integral part of the LCS vision to serve every child by name and by need, Fort Hill fills a gap in educating students that are removed from their base schools for a variety of reasons and varying lengths of time. More specifically, however, our vision is a school in which staff and students work together toward a shared purpose, academic success, and restored community. Before I move on to academics, I think it imperative to mention some of the ways that Fort Hill is focusing on restored community, including answering the important question, what does that even mean? Many of our students, perhaps most of our students, struggle with the traditional means and methods of education. They may have trauma, mental health challenges, special academic needs, difficulty regulating emotions, or communication and conflict resolution struggles. Many times, all of these issues are simultaneously true. But they also have tremendous gifts and strengths waiting to be brought out and honed. Our students need a new relationship to school, one that is restored by not just teaching them skills they need, but also providing opportunities to see school and themselves differently. This may sound cliche, and it's no small task, especially since we are just 1 year into a full revamp of our program. But here's what we have going for us so far on the restoration front. Number one, our staff are receiving more intensive trauma and restorative training to better serve the needs of our students in class. Number two, our restorative behavior team is working to provide individualized behavior plans and interventions for students, as well as lead them through identifying their values and then living from those values. Number three, our counselor has created a reentry plan for students receiving out-of-school and in-school suspension that guides students through 5 group therapy sessions and provides weekly check-ins to work on goals rather than simply expect change from punitive consequences. Number four, our community partners are joining with us to provide much-needed mentoring. And number five, our restorative specialist has created a transition curriculum and transition plans for students that are preparing to return to their base schools where they will then receive additional care based on these plans. Early results of these efforts are promising, as Fort Hill saw 44 students return to their base schools last year, with 75% of these students remaining there. Academically, Fort Hill shifted last year from 2 3-hour sessions to 1 6-hour session. The 2 3-hour sessions focused on paper packet work. The 6-hour session we are now in focuses on direct instruction and increasing levels of student engagement and activity in core subjects. Rather than restrict student experiences because of behavior concerns, we aim to increase student experiences to change their view of school. So we began the year with Registration Day, cookout for families complete with burgers and hot dogs, free fruit and vegetables from the local food co-op, popsicles passed out by our church partners, free haircuts provided by Dewan the barber and his mobile barbershop. Already on the docket this school year are planned trips to Lynchburg Water Resources, different museums in Stanton, Camp Kumbaya, among other things. One of our teachers is even planning a school-wide Wizard of Oz celebration for the anniversary of the Wizard of Oz, where we have cross-curricular lessons covering the significance of the literature in various subjects. We are surely a long way from the packet work of the past, and all of this can be accomplished while also holding students accountable for behavior expectations. One challenge that Fort Hill faces in implementing and tracking academic achievement is the transience of our students. Many of our students are not present at Fort Hill for the entire academic year, so SOL scores and other year-long metrics are not the best gauge of our teachers' capabilities or success. To better gauge academic success within units, we are working our way through the professional learning community process that so many others have mentioned. And what we're doing with that is developing common assessments and common rubrics where there are common skills, because we don't have the same common subjects as other schools, where there are common skills that can be measured across grades and subjects. Furthermore, we plan to emphasize reading skills and vocabulary across all subjects to boost students' reading levels. To more effectively measure this, we're doing a post-test, pre-test, and a post-test on each student that corresponds to their time at Fort Hill. I'm also working with our teachers on bringing in cultural and community resources to help students identify with concrete examples in their classroom lessons. Our students, these are yours and mine, are ripe with potential and want to serve as many students as needed to equip them with the skills they need to be successful in their base school and in life. They have strengths they don't even recognize and others fail to celebrate. They often don't believe in themselves or trust others, and we envision a change in that. It's a large task that requires a community and some faith, but we are, after all, Phoenix. Did y'all catch that name change, the mascot change? Yeah, we are, after all, Phoenix, which is a mythical bird that rises up from the ashes to be born again after defeat. Come and join us, 1350 Liggett's Road, Lynchburg, Virginia.
Thank you, Dr. Glover. Okay, we have two more presentations for this evening, and then we'll open it up for some questions. Moving on to high school, coming over from #1 Big Orange Country, we have Mr. Tim Beatty.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Beatty. I'm the proud principal of Heritage High School, #1 Big Orange Country. I stand before you today a very proud principal because of what we were able to accomplish last school year, which was a very, very challenging school year, as many of you know. I'd like to thank our students for their hard work in the classroom, our teachers, especially our teachers, because we refer to our teachers as the commodity in #1 Big Orange Country. Our testing coordinator, our school counselors, our admin team, our librarians, custodians, teacher assistants, everyone, secretaries had a hand to play in our achievement last school year. If you look at our school report card, we were a level 1 in English, in math, in science, and the reason why we were level 1 in science is even though our pass rate was 65%, we showed 10% growth from 60% the previous year to 65% last year. We know we have some work to do there to get to 70% to maintain that accreditation. We have SOL remediation class in biology to try to get those test scores up so that we can maintain accreditation in science. We are level 1 in GCI and dropout rate, and I'm really proud of that because we're graduating our kids, and it's a collaborative effort between our admin team, our counselors, and our registrar. We pulled the SSWS report. We look at all of our students. We look at that cohort list, students that graduate get 100, students who get a GED get 75. You still enrolled 70, 25% if you're a late graduate and 0 if you're dropout. So we have some work to do there, but we're still level 1 there and in dropout rate. As far as Black student achievement, our data went down slightly from 83% to 82%, but we're still level 1 for Black student achievement in English. I'm really, really proud of that. and I'm excited about the work that our English teachers are doing. And in math, we improved from 66% to 69% in Black student achievement. We still haven't met that 70% threshold yet, but we're showing growth with our Black students in math. We're at level 2, but our goal is to get to 70% in level 1 in Black student achievement for this upcoming school year. We know that we still have some work to do in English, in our gap groups in SPED, and in our attendance rate. We're going to work really hard to try to improve our attendance rate. We have a student incentive program that we're going to use this year to try to entice students to come to school, make sure they're there, and also an attendance recovery program to try to recoup some days when students are absent. So all in all, really, really proud of our staff and our students and everyone that really contributed to a successful year in #1 Big Orange Country. We have a saying, we're welcoming, encouraging, achieve, responsible, engaged. Have a great day in #1 Big Orange Country.
Thank you. All right, and our closer presenter for tonight, coming from EC Glass High School, is Dr. Danny Rule.
All right, good evening. And thank you first for your service and commitment to our LCS community. Let's begin by talking about EC Glass and the success that we had, celebrations and our road forward from this past year. So in 23-24, we had 1 out of 5 admin returning, and so it was a brand new culture shift, continuing the excellence of culture and adding our spin to it. So what do we do to the point of our motto that says, keep climbing, no excuses? There's 2 main factors that impact our student outcomes, and that's the teachers and the students that you've heard before. Those are the most 2 influential factors, and I want to talk a little bit about what we did for the teachers. So we observed teachers and gave them feedback. That seems really simple, but by doing that, we were able to help good teachers become better, and we were able to hold teachers accountable that maybe were not meeting the standard that we were setting. These teachers had intentional administrators that worked with them. All EC Glass staff worked with the model known as backwards design, or understanding by design in some circles. We began with the end in mind and scaffolded instruction to meet the needs of our students. Teachers created goals with their administration to learn or revisit developing lesson plans from the end and scaffolding up to what students needed to know. We measured the student growth or the lack of growth and held students and teachers accountable for results. What did this do for our results last year? Well, let's begin with some celebrations specifically, focused on the gap group of Black students in the area of English. Our English moved from an 82% pass rate to an 85% pass rate. In the area of math, achievement for Black students moved from 58% pass rate to 63% pass rate. In doing so, while we didn't meet the 70% that we aimed for, we moved from a level 3 to a level 2 by reducing the failure rate by 10%. Notably, also for students with disabilities, we went from 57% in English to 76% in English. In math, we went from 45% to 66%. I'm extremely proud of the students and teachers working through that hard work. Secondly, students need to feel loved. So on announcements every day, they hear from Dr. Rule that if nobody else has told them today that they love them, Dr. Rule loves them very much just the way they are. We found that students didn't have a voice, or felt, or the perception was they did not have a voice. So we gave students a voice. We did it through morning announcements with students' voices ringing through the hallways. We did it through the Hilltopper pulse checks with administration, where administrators met with students to hear what they wanted and how they perceived their school experience. And we often celebrated their successes. What are we going to do this year to continue that? Well, this might seem small, but every single math teacher at EC Glass is returning this year. There's not one new one in the building. We have all our English staff returning this year, except with the addition of one great teacher. Our work in the PLC model is just beginning. Teachers who share content were given and have been given common planning time so that they can pull apart the standards, pull apart students' success, and break it down. The EC Glass War Room, if you haven't visited, please come do so, is an intentional space to talk about solution-oriented results focused on student learning, and it's continuing to be embedded into the culture at EC Glass. Our growth also hinges on the partnership with our community. This year, we're establishing the community room at EC Glass. That's beyond the Beacon of Hope and other partners that we have already. So if you're interested in tutoring, please come join us in the EC Glass community room. The athletics blueprint is something that we're holding very high standards for all our athletes. And there's after-school tutoring, and there is the VHL standard, and then there's the EC Glass blueprint standard for athletes. We're working vertically with our main feeder school in Lincoln Middle School to align our practices and identify our students early. We're consistent with our co-teachers this year, so intentionally we've given them common planning time, and we've given them a common time in every classroom they're assigned for. But we need work to do with our chronic absenteeism. You might notice, according to the accreditation report, that that's still a big area. We've began the EC Glass attendance team, where there's 40 identified individuals. Before they get to a reactionary state, we're doing preventative work with those families and students and building relationships so we can get them to school. Our goal of going to a level 1 will be successful with this strategy. As we say at EC Glass, keep climbing, no excuses. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rule. Okay, before I transition to any questions the school board has, I think this was important for all of us to see. If you follow research that says what is an effective remediation strategy, and you even look at John Hattie's work, you'll know that collective teacher efficacy is probably number one. When teachers actually believe in the students that they teach, themselves, and each other, that we have the skills, resources, and everything necessary to make a positive difference, and that is a collective belief in a building, students will perform exceptionally. That doesn't happen if you do not have a leader at the top who is really invested in developing that collective efficacy by modeling it, expecting it, and holding teachers and staff accountable to be a part of that. And what you saw tonight are just half a sample, I guess, of those building leaders that develop that collective efficacy within their buildings. But I will also say, if you watch them as a PLC working together as support for one another. And that's so very critical whenever you ask me, what are you doing about the achievement gap? And I always say, it doesn't get closed here. It gets closed there with the work that they do. And they're much better about speaking about it than anything that Amy Reed and myself could ever say. And they only gave you 3 to 5, which I know for some of them, they could have taken 30 to 50 minutes on the things that they were doing. So what you heard, parent engagement is where we started, how very important it is for parents to be partners with the school. We know that. You heard about student conferencing and student goals and student investment in their own learning, student voice, and that started at elementary level and continued up to the high school level. I think, Dr. Rule, you ended with they needed a voice. We talked about PLCs. We use that a lot, professional learning communities, but it is very important to build that collective efficacy. You heard common language. One of the things that we're trying to develop is for kids to have that repetitive common language of expectations, understanding, so that when they go from class to class or grade to grade or building to building, they understand, oh, I know what this is. I had this last year. This is that common language and developing that across the group. You've heard about specific student skill development. We have enough assessments now to break it down into specific skills for specific children, which goes back to those personal learning plans that the principals talked about that their students have, that they're building with their teachers. I love the fact that we don't want to forget the importance of the whole child. A hungry child is not going to perform. A scared child is not going to perform. So making sure that they focus on all of those needs and making children feel valued in school is important. The I like school piece, it may sound simple, that you want kids to like school, but if they don't, and if they don't want to be there, then that math test at the end of the year is not important. So the fact that they are focusing on that and measuring that and making sure that that's an important piece. And even the pieces about field trips and all the fun. Sometimes we think, well, if the reading scores are down and the math scores are down, the only thing we need to do for children is give them more hours of more remediation, often with packets and worksheets or online assessments. And sometimes that's not it. Sometimes we have to help kids find their purpose and connect to other things. So it is important that they have the field trips and go to the museums and have those experiences, whether they're in their base school or whether they're in Fort Hill. It's important the amount of time that we spend with them, which is one of the reasons why we changed the hours at Fort Hill. So I wanted to give you as concise as I could with all of my team here, a glimpse into the work that they're doing and the achievement and improvement that has happened, at least from last year to this year, if not consecutive years for different subgroups, populations. The board has all of their data. You have all of their accreditation reports. You have access to school quality reports. You have their comprehensive plan, their needs assessment. You have all the numbers. They gave you a few of them. But I just wanted to say to all of you that I am so proud of the work that you do. And I know Amy Reed and I, we don't get to celebrate you enough. You talk about celebrations, but I know for me, before I turn it over to questions, I want to give you all a standing ovation for what you have accomplished for our students this past year. Okay, and with that, I'll turn it over to the school board. And you did great time, too.
Did.
Turn it over to the school board.
Questions?
I have some. I can honestly say I've been to Lincoln Middle School several times last year and knew about her. She told me all, Dr. Jill told me all the program, and it was fabulous. And some of the students I taught were there, and the kids really did love it, and they thrived. And I just thought she did an amazing job with her and her team turning, like she said, the system on its head, and it has worked, I think, very well. And I was reading at Heritage Elementary School, so I'm going to make this quick and do like I did with the kindergartners. Just thumbs up or thumbs down. How's the cell phone policy going? Just thumbs. That's all. Make it quick. Okay. All right, cool. That's all. I was curious.
That's it. I had a question. Oh.
Yes, go ahead.
Question for Sheffield. You said that you were focusing on parental engagement this year. What steps are you taking? So I know that's one of the most difficult things to overcome. Dr. Lee, how you doing?
For parental involvement and engagement, that's something, it's not a new endeavor, but we want to increase that focus. And just looking at how we can have partnerships, especially with our achievement gap areas for those students. Sometimes the communication that parents get it's unwanted. It's a phone call about a behavior or a conference where you're looking at a score that wasn't where it needed to be. And some of our parents have not had positive experience in school themselves. So we really want to bridge that gap and increase the partnership. So our focus is going to be to kind of grow some of what we have, more intentional positive communications. So if you see the phone number ringing from Sheffield, it's not a sense of dread. But there's an opportunity. I'm going to hear something positive about my children because our staff, we're invested and we love our students, but sometimes those communications are not sharing the positive. So we're looking to increase that. And our teachers have been doing a great job communicating with parents, but we want to grow that. We're also looking to continue to be specific with the activities that we're doing at our school that are increasing their capacity to support their children with the academics, with the behavior, and we want to grow that sense of feeling comfortable in the school. That was stronger before COVID, and then when everything shut down, it was a slow re-entry back into the buildings where you can come back in and eat with your children and come and read to the classes. So we're trying to really get that growing and alive, and our parents to feel like we're proud and we're excited that our children are here, and we have that with so many of our parents, but we want to extend it and expand that with parents through those connections.
Not a question, but just a comment. Listening to all of you talk about the various different things that you do, what I recognized is that you are perfectly indicative of all the things that we commend our children for, which is that everybody doesn't do it the same way, but that doesn't mean that we can't all be successful. And you were a perfect example of that. And also of learning from each other, because I'm sure that you heard some things spoken by somebody else that you thought, oh, I think I'm going to try that, or some derivative of that. So I applaud you for that. Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, I actually heard some things I'm going to take back to the community college. So. If you see any of that coming out, you'll know where that came from. Mr. Glover with Fort Hill, I have a question for you. As you're coming up, I know you face significant and unique challenges from your peers at Fort Hill Community School, and I'm just curious. We would, as a school board, really love to hear, what are your top 3 needs? What are the things that you need to do your job better?
Yeah, thanks for that question. First thing, top of the list, I would say, I've spoken with many people about this, is space. So we, last year, we served about 250 students. The max we had at one time was 140. Our building, everything perfectly scheduled, can hold 90 students. So, and that's if everything works out just as it's supposed to. So that means a lot of students end up going on remote learning, which is really means not learning for them, because most of them don't do it. So to effectively serve our students and get them in the building, it also creates more work for us, because then we're trying to actually run 2 programs. We're trying to do like a remote program and an in-school program. Attendance is really up this year. I don't have numbers for that right now, but our students have been coming a lot more consistently this year. So that also means, because of this space, our classes are small. If you've been to Fort Hill, our classrooms, except for one of them, are tiny. So our students are almost on top of each other, which for students that are already maybe needing some additional help with some of their conflict resolution, it's not always the most effective strategy. So number 1 would be space. Number 2, I would probably say one of the things we did when we went to a full day was we also made sure we opened it up and we had a special education teacher and we had more resources and supports. So previously, Fort Hill did not have a special education teacher. If students wanted to come to Fort Hill, the IEPs had to be completely amended to either do consultative services, which a lot of them still are, or the parent just had to forego services. Last year, we had around 60 students with IEPs, which is an incredibly high number for one special education teacher. So if we want those students' needs to be met, I would say more resources and support in terms of that, because a lot of what happens is students get placed over there, but then the IEPs have to be amended to say consultative services or something else, just because we don't have the staff we need to actually meet all of the things that they need. You gave me 3 things. Third thing, I would say one of the things that we have been really blessed to have is we've gotten some of the grant funding from Dr. Brown and his team for our restorative people. So I have a restorative specialist that's focused specifically in my building with some of the behaviors that we see, and it varies, it's all over the place. We have students there that they just respond differently. You never know what's gonna trigger some and not others. I think we have talked about more intensive training for our faculty, because if we're not doing packets and students are there for 6 hours at a time instead of 3-hour sessions, it's a lot more time to make sure you know how to teach students really well and actually manage and navigate some of the behaviors you're dealing with. So some of the resources we're devoting, or Dr. Brown and his team are devoting to more training, which I'd say we still need more. The other thing is the restorative piece, and those supports are super helpful. So our restorative specialist is working and spearheading a lot of the things I mentioned in my plan. But then some of the positions, if you have even extra supports like RBTs, which are restorative behavior technicians. They are less costly, but they provide really good support. If you have ones that are trained really well by Rich Ferguson, they provide really good support to try to pull kids out for breaks before things explode. So those would be the top 3 things I would say. Yep.
So you invited the conversation, I'm gonna have the conversation. So to piggyback on what Dr. Tinsley just said, we talked a lot about challenges and successes with attendance, achievement, accreditation, and attitude towards school, right? Like, we want kids to love school, not just be present, right? Because they need to be present. So I want to ask you guys, how can the board help you? Like, I really want you to tell us, how can we help you succeed moving forward in the next school year, right? Attendance, accreditation, attitude towards school, right? And achievement, right? Because I hear test scores growing up, I hear the achievement gap reducing, but I also hear some things you need our help with, right? And let us know, and I'll write those things down. And that's something that I feel like we could, come on, Catherine, there you go. What you need?
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Catherine Bragg. I didn't speak earlier because Dr. Lee just crushed it. But I would love to answer that, and hopefully other people would like to chime in as well. I think it is imperative that we have a board that is united. I think it is imperative that we have a board that is working in a collaborative spirit with our city council. I think that a lot of what is happening is reflecting in the decisions that we make, and it is sometimes hard for us to care for the whole child when some of the communication and language that comes from city council or the school board does not consider the whole child. So I think my response to that would be unity and collaboration.
I'd like you to delve a little deeper in that. Give me like some examples. I'm totally, I want you to
Yes,
be honest.
yes.
Give us examples. I
Yeah.
have a thick skin.
Yeah, so I mean, I have kids in our school district. I obviously work in our school district. I'm very passionate about the students that I work with here. And I just think that, I think that sometimes some of the things that we are focused on is not the whole child. And I think some of the decisions and things that we spend a lot of time exhausting ourselves over and getting political about is not focused on the students. It's not focused on our community as much as it should be. So something that Sandusky Middle School does is really collaborate with our community and our stakeholders, and I think that would be a great opportunity. For example, as we are opening up our search for leadership in our community, which is very monumental and pivotal, it's also kind of confusing as a leader in Lynchburg City Schools that we don't have teachers on this board for our leadership. We don't have administration from all 3 schools, like all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school, to search for leadership. So that's what I mean when I say we need unity. We need a unified vision, and we need to remove the politics and the politics. Yes.
And just to add to that, I'm the teacher. I mean, I've been on the school board, this is my 2nd year, but I taught for 31 years.
Yes.
And I still tutor, and I still help in school system tutor.
Absolutely.
For free, of course. But yeah, I hear you, and
Absolutely.
I still have that teacher mindset, so.
I think
hear
our crew here would say that, actually, our principal said this in a faculty meeting today, that students today are a new breed, and there's a lot that has happened and transpired in response to COVID, and I think that it's very important that the board includes teachers, not to discredit your
Mhm,
years
yeah,
of
yeah,
service,
yeah.
because you are phenomenal, and you're in our building all the time, but I think it's very important that we open up the doors and that committee to people who are actively serving our students today. So.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Beatty?
I would also say messaging from the division level as it relates to attendance, whether it's a billboard somewhere in the community, signage at barbershops or the mall, or something that says attendance matters, so that, you know, when as parents are driving down the highway, they see attendance matters, LCS, something along those lines. It has to be the entire division making an effort to improve attendance. It can't just be done at the school level. It has to be really an all-in effort from everyone to help improve attendance, because it can't just be done by each school on the island. It has to be everyone. So I think if we can have some consistent messaging as it relates to attendance matters, some type of, like I said, billboards, posters, anything that could just a visual of that can really make a difference in regards to engaging parents. And parental engagement, sometimes it's not just about visiting the school. It's just about parents having conversations with their kids, whether it's at home, whether it's, whether at work, whatever. Any conversation that a parent has with their kid, it's parental engagement, and we just want to try to increase that and try to improve that to help our attendance overall.
So you talked about attendance, right? Attendance matters. So what's the barrier to attendance? Is it, I know you say parental engagement. I grew up in a single parent household. My mom worked 2 jobs, right? So I get that part. Is it transportation? Is it people just don't want to show up to schools because they don't know the reason why they need to be there? Like, what's the...
I think, understanding the value of school and education, and knowing that, education can take you to 3 pathways, whether it's college, military, or workforce, and being able to explain and articulate those ideas and how important it is to be able to go one of those three paths. Don't necessarily have to go to college to be successful. You can go straight into the workforce. We have so many resources and industry certifications that kids can earn. I think educating everyone about those opportunities could go a long way into helping students and parents understand that the value of education and how important it is to be in school and to be engaged. So yeah, I would say just understanding what we can provide as a school and a school division as it relates to workforce, military, and higher education.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say that one of the biggest things that I hear my colleagues and teachers say is a kid is more than a test score. I do recognize that we all have a report card, and I do recognize red is not a pretty color that we want to be in. However, when we talk about challenges, or when we talk about achievement, we're talking about lives. We're talking about kids walking into the building. We're talking about, I bet you my next paycheck that every single principal, assistant principal, counselor, teacher, custodian, secretary, everybody knows when Johnny walks in and his head is down and what they need to do. So from the board perspective, I challenge you to come into schools and see what we are doing. We recognize that COVID has given us whatever, or situations or whatever they are, but here's the deal. Every day, everyone in our buildings is showing up ready to give everything we have for these kids. It is not about a score. It's about looking at what we're doing and tweaking and making it better, because all of us can. The kids can, we can, everybody can. But it's so important, instead of being critical, seeing what's behind the scenes, seeing what we're doing, seeing what we're trying to do. We're all open to suggestions. There's not one of us that won't. We talk to each other, we text each other, we have group chats, we have these emojis where we just go, oh my goodness. But here's the deal. I can call Dr. Rule, or I can call Dr. G, and they're our same kids. I can have a kid that transferred to Sandusky, and I can pick up the phone. I can transfer to Dunbar, we can pick up the phone. We are doing everything in our power to get these children to achieve. They are children. We're working through that. From the board's perspective, to understand that we are open to any kind of suggestions, but being on the same page and supporting us, and having the feeling that we're not adversaries, that we can come in and that we're working and that we can work collaboratively.
I would say mental health support. What we're seeing, what our families are dealing with, what our kids are dealing with, the trauma that they're dealing with. Teachers are wearing every possible hat now. They just are not academic teachers, they're psychologists, social workers. They're having to do everything. So if we could have additional mental health support in each building, that would go a long way.
Thank you.
What does that position look like? If you were to describe it.
Trained trauma experts. We have several children that are working with DSS, getting pulled from their homes. So experts who are trained in dealing with that type of trauma.
And we have some in the system now, but not at every school.
We have some, but there are not enough. We have over 400 students, and we have a large number of students who are dealing with a lot, not just, trying to learn, but coming to school
PTSD.
and being safe.
Principals, I have a question for all of you. What Mr. Benyos just talked about, do you see them more of a need at elementary or middle or high school? Or it's equal all the way through?
I was just gonna say, something I just said to my lovely boss right here. Do I need to? Yeah, okay. In the spirit of being collaborative and going upstream with our city council, I think that the answer that we all just whispered was it is equal between all three levels, but I think in being proactive, it's also what are we doing on the community side of things, because all of this is generational, all of this is happening within our community. So that's what I'm saying when I say, how are we linking arms with city council so that way the support is, yes, we have these babies for 7-ish hours a day and we're doing our best, but what are we doing to stop cycles? What are we doing to invest in our community? So that's what the big hope is, to collaborate on that level.
Other comments or suggestions? So let me say that I hope you will continue to think about the question that Mr. Andrews posed to you. And if, as you go home tonight and think about this conversation, if other ideas come to you, then please write to us or contact us with them. Don't let it end here. I mean, that's the way I am. When I'm in a setting like this, I always think about what my answer should have been about 24 hours later. So if you're like that and you do think of something in the future that you wish you would have said tonight, then please write to us, call us, contact us in some way so that we can hear from you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all
guys
for coming.
Have a hard job.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Great job, thank you.
Okay. How about if we take a 5-minute break? Everybody agreeable to that?
Yes.
Sure. All right, take a 5-minute break. I think our next item is the capital improvement plan. So Dr. Whitaker and Mr. Floyd.
Okay, all right, so I'm going to quickly turn this over to Dr. Whitaker and Mr. Floyd to go over that.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and good evening, members of the board. Mr. Floyd, if you don't know, Mr. Floyd is our Director of Facilities and Maintenance, and Mr. DePaul gave me a hard time at the committee meeting for not letting Don talk, so he's gonna do several of these things. I'm very excited about capital improvement plans. We're gonna do it together. So tonight we have a presentation on the draft fiscal year 2026 through 2030 capital improvement plan submission to the city. So the process is, we'll talk a little bit more about the city side of the process, but in terms of our process, city staff evaluated a number of projects. We have come up with a proposal. We reviewed that with the Finance and Facilities Committee last week. They voted to move this forward with, in addition to some context around an alternative proposal that the board will consider, I'm sure, and that's great. All of these projects, as they exist and as we put them right now, certainly are all draft at this point based on some of the decisions that you have made, but also some of the work that we have done in terms of the facility master plan process. So we are in our process now. We were just giving this to you for information tonight. We will ask you to then vote next week, whether it's these projects we've identified tonight or if there are other additions or alterations that you may need to review. Next slide is, I just want to first define what a capital project is in Lynchburg. Different organizations define capital projects in different ways. In Lynchburg, it is a betterment of the community in some way that has a life of not less than 20 years, and it costs equal to or exceeding $25,000. That's just how we in the city define it, and that is how we sort of move forward in that process. So we'll go through that. So I identified the process that we will take as an organization. But more generally in the capital improvement planning process in the city of Lynchburg, every fall, Lynchburg City Schools proposes a capital improvement plan to the city of Lynchburg to include in their upcoming budget development process. So all of our CIP items outside of the grant funds and that sort of thing that we receive goes through the city process, and much of that is funded through city capital dollars. That submission is typically due in late October or early November, which is why we're having the conversation now for then ultimately for you to approve this or some version of this in early October, so that we can then have time to transition into the form that the city uses to make their budget book. We plan for a 5-year period for the following 5 years. So we are presently in fiscal year 2025, of course. The proposal is for fiscal year 2026 through 2030. Ultimately, LCS submits that proposal budget. The city staff will evaluate it in terms of the context of other city projects that might be going on, what the bond capacity might be, what pay-as-you-go one-time money might be available, what grants are available, and so forth and so on. And then they will then ultimately use that in the city manager's proposed budget, whatever those decisions may be. That typically occurs in March. And then ultimately those projects are proposed as a part of the city's capital improvement program. Ultimately then, of course, as we know, the city council then will debate all parts of the city budget. And ultimately whatever is funded in that budget is appropriated year by year. So we have a 5-year plan, but the actual appropriation of funds or approval of funds occurs on a 1-year basis every single year. So that's the appropriation. We're going to talk about the difference between appropriation and cash flow in just a moment. So I'll talk just briefly about a couple of goals that we had. I think what you heard tonight from the principals was a very focused, very intentional plan for their schools to improve instruction, to help achievement improve. We try to follow that as well, that plan as well, to have a very intentional plan focused on specific issues that are in our school buildings. Because I think you've probably heard me say it a couple of times, where the most important thing we do as a school division is to hire incredible teachers and put them in front of kids. But the really close second is to make sure that our facilities are places that are happy, healthy, and safe. They support learning. They are places that people want to be as well. And so we want to make sure that we are focused on that. We also are making sure that we are focused to ensure that our buildings are being invested in to ensure their longevity, that we're able to reflect the whole student experience, that we are able to proactively maintain the building. So we have a lot of deferred maintenance to go to address. but we really are trying to, where we can, proactively do that net maintenance as well. We'll also really be intentional about leveraging grant funds when they are available. We'll talk in just a minute about particularly the school construction assistance program. But I think that's a very important program for us, as well as other programs, but certainly the school construction assistance program is a very important one. And then, of course, where we can possibly, we want to make capital investments that can lead to revenue generation for the school division to improve our educational experiences. So some of that might be through facility rentals and those sorts of things, performance spaces, athletic fields that are rented by the community. We can then bring that money back into our educational experiences as well. So I mentioned the VDOE's, the Virginia Department of Education's School Construction Assistance Program, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to address a couple specific things that have come up in the meantime since we've had the original conversation with the Finance and Facility Committee. And what you'll see is as we go through the projects, you'll see this little green tag on there that might be a SCAP target project, one we might look to as a potential project as we go forward. I'm not going to read this slide to you. You can read that, but I want to address one particular issue. And unfortunately, when we were presenting this presentation to the Finance and Facilities Committee last week, there was a concurrent presentation at City Council that we were not aware of was going to occur. It talked about a lot of things related to the school division, a lot of things related to construction in the process of the capital plan, and in particular related to the school construction assistance program. And the statement was a very full-throated explanation, as well as I think a very lively conversation was around the concern that there needed to be an agreement between the school board and the city council related to maintenance of funds for the school division, right? So operating revenue for costs. And so the concern was, well, hey, the school construction assistance program requires that city council agree to at least continue the same amount of funding continuing on while we're financing this project, right? That was a very long conversation. Unfortunately, was not accurate. So what I've provided you there is a link to the VDOE website. And on that website, you'll see a couple of different documents that you can refer to related to that document. So you'll see a document that looks just like this. This is a program guide, and in this you can find where it talks about where that agreement may be. And it states that a school division may have that agreement, but it is simply for, in this process, a scoring component. You get 5 points if you have this agreement that they talk about, right? You have to have 65 points to be able to get the grant, but 5 of those points can come if you have that agreement. But if you don't have that, you do not disqualify from the process, okay? So that's really, really important, and that is consistent with what we've said, as well as the fact that we also got a school construction assistance program project grant for the Dunbar Middle School windows that I'm so proud of. It's one of my favorites. So there's this document. If you'll also see the frequently asked questions document, it talks about that program as well. And if you don't believe me and you don't believe these 2 documents, I also have an email here from the director of the program at the VDOE that says, in fact, you can still get this grant if you don't have the agreement between the city council and the school board. So I want to make sure that is as clear as we possibly can, that is the issue.
The 3 things you just showed us, where do we have access to?
It's at that link.
That link will take us to all of them.
You don't have my email, but you
okay.
These 2 documents. But I'm happy to share that with you. So I just want to make sure that we are making sure that we're saying accurate things about the program. Again, certainly would agree that it'd be great to have that agreement. We don't have that in the place, but we just don't simply have that. We have communicated that to city staff. We will do that again.
We meet with them the next Tuesday, so the joint, so.
October.
It's October. I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad.
So, the good news about the school construction assistance program is that we, school divisions, in particular school divisions like us that do have a higher poverty rate, can be eligible for up to 30% of a project. And so that's a really, really important part of a potential grant program and a way to fund these projects as well. So we'll go to the next slide. What I wanted to provide is there's a distinction, what we provided over the next, actually we have 7 years here because we wanted to talk through a couple of projects that will be coming in the future. We'll go through what those are. But we've provided with the appropriation, what we've proposed every years, and then we have our proposed cash flow The difference is the proposed total appropriation is just simply when the project is approved to begin starting funding, right? The proposed cash flow is realizing that many of our projects may exceed more than one fiscal year. So if you replace Sandusky Elementary School, for instance, or do a big renovation, whatever the case may be, likely it is going to take, well, certainly it is going to take more than one fiscal year. And so the cash flow is very important because that's really what helps the city see what their financial obligation is going to be at any one particular fiscal year and when they're issuing bonds and those sorts of things. So that's really the matter there. So we've really tried to identify that as best we can. Obviously, every single year, it's going to be a little bit different, as well as recognizing that construction projects don't always go half of the project in one year, half of the next year. So it might, it'll be slightly different, but that's the anticipated cash flow as well. So what we also try to do when we put this together is we try to keep it relatively even given the goals that the school board had voted on previously. So you'll see in fiscal year 27 and 28 under the cash flow, those numbers are a little bit higher, but that would represent the Sandusky Elementary School project. That's just a big project that would be there. Otherwise, we've tried to keep it, we don't want one year there'd be $500,000 and one year there'd be $50 million, right? Where we possibly can. So we're going to go through the major parts of the project. We won't read it line by line. And Don is going to join me on this. We'll start out with the first project is the Sandusky Elementary project. As we discussed at the last school board meeting, based on the the July 23rd school board vote to replace Sandusky Elementary School, this is how we've constructed this plan. I understand that there is another alternative proposal, and that's great. If you choose to do that, we will alter the plan that we will submit. But just based on the way that the school board has voted at this point, we have developed the plan with that idea in mind. As I mentioned last week, we worked with a local architect to help us identify 3 solutions. One of those solutions is a major renovation to Sandusky Elementary School plus some additions to try to make sure that the appropriate spaces are developed in that building. And ultimately, essentially the walls would be the same, but everything inside would be sort of different as well. And even the interior walls would likely be moved, but the basics of the walls. That could be a more cost-effective solution. As you can see, we talked about what those costs would be last time. And again, this is the way that, because we think this is consistent with what the school board said at the time, and certainly, again, would be a more cost-effective solution than maybe a much larger school or a new school as well. Certainly other solutions may be there. You all, I'm sure, will have a great conversation about that. Certainly willing to do whatever needs to be done in terms of this project as well. So that's really one of our major projects. We've put it in because we know this has been a priority for a number of years to do the design of the building next year and over the following 2 years to do the construction. There's a lot of details that would have to be worked out with that. How would transition of the students go and those sorts of things. But that's sort of how we've defined it over the next 3 fiscal years for the proposed cash flow. Are there any questions now on that particular project?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Is it okay? Where will we find out what the financial cost of relocating the students for those 2 years of construction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's a couple components there. So how we will actually do that, we don't know that yet. I mean, that'll be part of the construction management process. Whether we'll be able to keep students in some part of the school and use mobile units or whatever the case may be. Don't have that planned yet. Certainly, that will be a little bit later on in the process. But
that will be a cost.
It will absolutely be a cost.
So would that be part of the proposal we take to the city? That
let me look.
Also, it's $30 million plus $5 million to transition the students during construction.
I certainly don't think it'd be that much, but I can give you more detail on that. We follow up with that. Great question.
If you find any extra mobile units, maybe we can have some and put them over at Fort Hill. Then they can save some space.
I don't think they have space for them.
All right.
Yeah, Fort Hill has a lot of space.
Okay, have space for more cottages?
Unless we put them in T.C. Miller.
Here's the check. Yeah. So if there's no other questions about that right now, I know there's conversation to be had.
And this, in the lower left corner, that illustrates what you were saying about the difference between appropriation and cash flow on the previous page.
Yes, sir. And that really matters to the city when they're planning their bond issuance. So the way they do their bond issuance, it just matters quite a bit. Yeah. Don will take the next one.
All right, so
on the next page for 2026, excuse me, the SCAP grant for Bass. I don't know if we've had an update on that, Dr. Woodica.
Yeah, so I've had to resubmit this 3 times with my friends at VDOE, so we're still working through that. But assuming that that goes through, there would be potentially a 30% match on that if we continue forward with that project.
But
that would be an HVAC improvement.
In putting this list together, we really took an opportunity to look at the equipment, the infrastructure in the buildings, knowing the life cycles of the equipment in the buildings. That's what helped guide us in formulating this list and this kind of lineup of projects. We intentionally are focusing on HVAC, electrical, plumbing, or MEP, as we like to call it, and upgrading these systems across the division. So Paul Monroe and EC Glass in 27, Perrymont, followed by Perrymont and RS Payne, and you can see the proposed amounts there for those projects. Lincoln Middle School in Dunbar, and then on to Hutcherson. And these are really crucial items in the building. We're talking about HVAC equipment. Some of these systems have domestic water systems that have been in place since the original construction of the building. So you can imagine some of the life cycles are way out of line. Lincoln Elementary in 31, I believe that is same thing, electrical and plumbing upgrades. In 26, and then there's the appropriation schedule at the bottom there. All right.
Lincoln is quite a big percent of a new building for HVAC.
So a couple things on Lincoln, we'll talk about in a minute. Lincoln includes the addition of a gymnasium, because it doesn't have one right now, so that project would include that as well.
School roof replacements. Lynchburg City Schools over the last 10, 15 years have been very aggressive of keeping up with our cycles of our roofs, trying to keep all our roofs under warranty. And we're kind of coming back around, but these are the last few projects that we need to complete to keep our roofs within that 20, 25-year warranty. So Laurel Regional and Lincoln Elementary would be in 2026, and you can see the proposed amounts there. Bedford Hills Phase 1, which would, I believe, is the maybe the metal roof at Bedford Hills, with Phase 2 in 28, which would be the flat sections. Paramount Elementary with the flat sections of those roofs, and then moving on to Fort Hill Community School and Sandusky Middle School flat section. And then 30 technically would have Sandusky Middle School, the metal section.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Laurel, Fort Hill.
Mm-hmm.
We share those with regionals.
Yeah.
Are they going to share in some of this? Are we able to charge them back? Hey, roof cost $1 million. I need 200 from you.
Well, so Laurel and Fort Hill are two different things. So the Laurel is formally, both are regional programs, but Laurel is actually its own fund and it operates on its own. But our relationship with Laurel is that we have an agreement that we're going to own the building, we're going to maintain the building, all the things that, so if the agreement had been done in a different way, perhaps in the past.
You said they have a pad lease, huh?
They have a very favorable lease
Okay.
because we care very deeply about their mission. But that is our obligation. Fort Hill does have students from other regional school divisions, but they pay sort of a tuition into that grant program. So, we are the full owner of that. We are our responsibility is that. The two are different. Are two a little bit too different.
Tuition current, is it up to current? Does it help cover the cost of those students for real, or is it just a nominal?
Yeah.
I don't believe we control that, though, because it is a regional program and some of the funding comes from a grant. I don't believe we control the amount that they pay towards attending.
Yeah, we can learn more about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great question. So we won't go to it tonight because of just in time, but if you look, there's a link on the PowerPoint. You can take a look at the new roofs versus old roofs. It's a picture of EC Glass. You can see where there are white roofs, those are new roofs, and the black roofs are the ones that will be replaced at Glass this year. And those are just, if you're looking at an aerial map, that's what you look for. I'm excited about it. And it's very.
We are too. Okay, I think we're ready for the next one. Yeah, so you want to take that back, or you want me to
You go.
continue?
Go.
So athletics, in the past, we've tried to keep a cycle of replacing tracks and turf. They also have life expectancies that we try to keep up with. We've kind of fallen off schedule a bit. So EC Glass turf is, and most of the turfs in the city have an 8-year warranty, and we're well past those now. So EC Glass turf, and then EC Glass track replacement, we're trying to tackle that as a project so we can do the turf first, then have the track work. The track also needs to have the base, which is the substrate underneath the tracks, has to be replaced this time. Unbelievable, but Heritage High School baseball turf is coming around. It's over 8 years old right now and is due to be replaced. Heritage High School, followed by the turf field, which was put in a year later after the baseball field. And then, of course, Heritage High School's track needs resurfacing as well. And then you can see that the proposed budget amounts in the following 5 years. And this is important because, I mean, the community does get a lot of use out of our facilities, tennis courts in particular, and I think we'll touch on those in a bit, but the tracks are always open to the community. Parks and Rec uses our facilities quite a bit. So it benefits not only our students, but the community as a whole. All right?
So the tennis court is included with the track?
I think we have a,
Is that what you said?
It's not, no.
Yeah.
I mean, so we'll have at the end, there's a capital fund where we fund the tennis court projects.
yeah.
And I
So
think,
if the high schools are due, the middle schools ought to be not far behind, right?
well, the middle schools, they have grass, turf, we're gonna talk about that.
Talking about the track.
The tracks, definitely Dunbar will need to be done. We've asked for that, I think, a couple of times.
Yep.
And I think there's a theme here, we'll talk about at the end, that we have greatly pulled this request back from what was proposed last year, for obvious reasons, but we think it's important to continue there. This is a picture of EC Glass, the track in particular. What you'll see there is the base of the track is deteriorating. We think it's probably original from the 50s, but you can see that it's really falling apart, and really it's becoming a very significant safety concern. The turf is also has a number of concerns as well. And what you can see on the track on the left side is that the rubberized material that is the surface of the track has completely deteriorated. And so that in lane 1 there, which again is of course where most track athletes end up running, because once they get started, it's just dangerous, and it needs to be repaired. It needs to be fixed as well, and you can see that as well. So, yes, sir.
Just so everybody knows, I went over to visit it, and that distance from the track down to the field varies from about 6 inches to 9 inches as you walk along. It's a tripping hazard, number one. But as they're fighting for lane number 1 and people start bumping, if anyone goes in field, that's a tripping. That's a danger. That's going to be a physical injury likelihood. Now, those pieces right there, you should, if you can't see it from here, but it should be even with the field itself, and it's not. So that adds tremendously to the problem. They need to take this whole thing up. And when I walked on the football field, same thing. There's places where it's coming up. They do a great job of fixing it to repair it, but it's going to get tore up. That's another thing. I tripped I'm not saying I'm an athlete or anything, but I tripped myself. I tripped as I was just walking on the unevenness of the internal field.
This is the field where JV and
Yeah.
and
In lacrosse and field hockey and soccer.
It's more than something that needs to be done. This is going to avoid a lawsuit. Since we're being made aware of this, this is a lawsuit waiting to happen. That's number one. Number two, since it is Department of Rec, Parks and Recs, city general population, and the school, we're looking at a situation where this is not just an LCS issue. This is a city issue. Now, it should be a line item on the city itself, or it should be at least divvied up amongst the three. So the $1.7 million ends up being 6 for us, a little less than 6. That is really the way it needs to be presented to the city. Because if this is not fixed this year, I'm going to say close down the field. This is a legal issue. It is a liability issue, more than insurance. This is lawsuit issue. And if we can't fix it, if this is not gonna be fixable for us, we need to block this off. We need to shut down this field and this track.
This conversation reminds me of something I heard about the pellets in the fields. Has a reputation for being carcinogenic to students, and they're doing more studies on it. One or two have shown some correlation between illnesses of students and the particular material that is made. If you look in between the turf grass and the pellets that are in there, you can see how it's like not quite green, it's black and green. The material that it's made out of can be carcinogenic in some form, some way.
That material is friable at this point. Friability of materials is really what causes.
worse.
Yeah, it makes it more of an issue. The track is friable, the materials on the inside are also crumbling themselves. So any dust that kicks up from them is probably going to exacerbate your concern at this point.
Asthma, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
breathing.
Tackled, lying down, their face rubbing in it. You're spot on. I don't know about the materials, but the friability of it, just walking on the track, it's a hazard.
So that infill is a crumb rubber. But it is made from a virgin rubber product, so it's not recycled tires like was initially when field turfs first came out. The industry has moved a lot in the last 10 years, and so there are a lot more options for infill rather than rubber. They're using some Mondo and some cocoa fibers and things like that.
I'll try to find the article, but that sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great to learn more about that for sure.
And this project with the track team, Mr. DePaul, is something that will be taken care of in this project. That is something we're certainly after as
I
well.
would certainly hope so.
Yes, sir, for sure.
And I, Mr. DePaul, I can't express to you thanks enough to come out and just be part of it. We welcome anybody who wants to see this or any other project. So we really do appreciate it. And it obviously, you can tell we care very deeply about these things. And I appreciate you coming. On the next project, this is a continuation of the elementary gym additions. The first one, I know this has been a passion project for Dr. Gupta. I'm sorry he's not here to hear, but hopefully he'll get to vote for it next time. But this is the addition of a gym at Heritage Elementary School. A couple years later, we would do Paul Monroe, then Darrington. As I mentioned before, we included the gym addition to Lincoln Elementary School as a part of their project before. So that will also be there. So those are the remaining 4 gyms that we would like to do every other year as we continue forward with that. Yes, ma'am.
Where would we place these gyms? Inside or just additional on the outside?
So it would be similar to the gyms that have been built at Perrymont, Sheffield, Bedford Hills, if you've seen those. They're standalone buildings.
Okay.
So you take Paul Monroe, I think what we do probably is to do it on where the blacktop, one of the blacktops is in the back. And so that would be, I think, a great option,
Okay.
maybe somewhere else as well. But
Where would you do it at Heritage?
that Heritage is a challenge. So I think the best place, I think probably the best place, and Don doesn't like this because he has to move the playground, but I think probably the best place is where the playground is at this point, and then move the playground. But he is not a big fan of that.
They always move the playgrounds.
Yeah, isn't that where the parents pick up and drop off?
Well, it would be off the parking lot, but.
Okay.
Yeah, so that, there's, it's that, or we can do it a little bit further back. There's not a great solution on that site, but that's.
Have you seen Rustburg? I think it's middle school. They have an old gym and a new gym on the inside. 2 gyms on the inside. It's pretty large and looks very nice, and get one to the other pretty quickly.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but we'd love to revisit maybe and see how it works. Absolutely. All right. This is continuation of more of the athletics facilities. So this is actually a project that came to us from the superintendent's parent advisory committee. They said, hey, we have middle school students that are competing in athletics. Why do we not have lights on the field at our middle school for our middle school teams? That becomes particularly challenging later in the fall when we're trying to play football, or early in the springtime. That way it kind of really very much limits the ability for the middle school track and field complexes, which includes, of course, football and soccer as well. So what we'd like to propose is, number one, adding lights to each of the middle schools over the next several years, as well as doing some improvements to the grass fields at the middle school. So if you've been to a number of these fields, they're because they're so well used, the turf, the grass turf has become very worn and just needs improvements. I don't know if you could talk more about that.
Yeah, so all the fields, all the middle school fields need what's called a crown renovation, meaning that they're very flat now from use. And so the water doesn't drain to the outer perimeters of the field. Some of our fields need drainage work to improve playability. The irrigation systems at these sites are approaching almost 20 years old now, so they need either refurbishing or replacements or upgrades. We kind of took a holistic approach for the athletic complexes at the middle schools.
What about their tracks?
So the tracks, I was going to comment on that. The Sandusky and Lincoln tracks we're doing more recently. They are approaching that age. Dunbar had some repairs done to it. Of course, Dunbar is an irregular track or non-standard, but that is also due for replacement. But we're seeing a higher use rate at the high schools, and that's why we kind of placed them on that list as we did.
I like it overall, but I almost don't like the order of the lights. I think that 27, 28, and 29 for the middle schools, for safety's sake and for usage sake, if you could move it up to 20, 26, 25, it seems to me more.
Yeah, the need is there for sure, and I think what we really struggled with was balancing that funding over the period of time, with Sandusky potentially front-loading the next couple of years very heavily. We tried to balance out the appropriation or the ask for funding.
But absolutely, but you're right. I mean, that's where that's why we're having the conversation. So, if the board thinks we need to make an adjustment, we absolutely will do that.
What about is there a reason you ordered Lincoln, Dunbar, Sandusky? I'm thinking Dunbar might need the lights first, since the location of the field is right, on a city street where
Sure.
the other two are back off.
That would be fine if we want to do that. There's no logic to that.
Okay.
It's just they all three need to be done. We want to do that. So we could certainly do Dunbar first and Lincoln second.
So my question was, what about renting those light generators? So when you see people that work on the streets in the middle of the night use, is there a possibility to just rent those until we're able to get those lights in?
Those probably are not really acceptable for play, but we
okay.
have rented those for some of these situations for security and for exiting those areas as needed, yeah.
Okay,
So,
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
All right.
So there are standards in terms of the amount of lumens that you need per foot for different kinds of play. Lacrosse in particular is one that needs a very high lumen because the ball is real small and you need to be able to see it. But that's, we do that. We do definitely rent them when we have Jug Bowl as well as the Glass Heritage basketball games at Glass, because there's not great lighting there. So.
How many times a year do we need lighting in a field for the middle schools?
Well, I mean, I think
We've had a few requests for some later activities, so maybe a couple times a year. Right now, we have lights being deployed at the stadium, and when basketball season comes around, we'll deploy them at the high schools for additional lighting.
But to fully light or illuminate a field to the legal quantities a couple times a year, it doesn't really justify.
No.
well that would be for games, right? But then you have practices that maybe want to be later. Yeah. It would be, it could be other community events.
Well, that was my question. How many times a year is it needed?
I mean, it depends on the schedule, right?
Yeah, and portable light towers are not going to be usable for game or practice
I
situations.
agree with that. But I'm talking about outfitting a field with the expense to which we're going to outfit a field with full lighting, proper lighting. How many times a year is it? That was my question. How many times a year?
So I think for the middle school teams, I think it would be the late fall time frame when the time has changed for football and that sort of thing. Early springtime so that the practices would be just about every day. The other issue we have in particularly at Glass is just simply having enough field space at one time. So the other, I think, opportunity would be that we could use some of these other fields that may be off campus so that we could keep it as well. So I think it could be used quite a lot, but it's a fair point.
Okay.
I'm glad you said that. I was at Heritage, and it was a time of some special event, and the parking was gone.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of space, I noticed, if you go way back past the tennis courts, all the way down to the back there, there's some space that can be made into parking space way down there. If I don't know the term for parking for that, if it's if it's able to be converted to that, I think that would be a good project, because going across the street and going other places to the elementary school for parking at Heritage is unnecessary if we can increase the usage of the space that we have and make it, for cars too.
Okay, so we could evaluate a potential option for that. Sure.
Yeah, I'll try to see where I saw that down there.
Would some of those practices, could the problem be solved if the stadium's available or something like that?
So we use a stadium.
I know we do, but yeah.
For primarily for, so all of soccer is done at the stadium, and of course football in the springtime or in the fall. I know that they don't want us to use it all the time.
Yeah,
I think that's.
I get it.
I think we do our best to hold our welcome there as well.
Yeah, gotcha.
But it's a great point.
Dr. Ward, can you go back to the gym, elementary gym additions?
Sure.
Why did you choose Heritage as the first one, just out of curiosity?
I hope he will be okay if I say this, but it's because Dr. Gupta has been so focused on this. It would have been the first.
That's probably a valid reason for you.
That's why. The other thing I'll say about that project, and I think is an important thing, is one of the challenges we have in addition to parking at Heritage High School is when the school was built, the gym was designed supposed to be used to be able to split it in half with the curtains that are there. That has really just never worked. And because it's the only indoor track in the region, really, all the indoor track meets are held at Heritage. So anytime there's an indoor track meet in the wintertime, well, practices can't occur there. What I'd like to do, if we can, is maybe do a little bit bigger building at Heritage, so that if during the day, the elementary school could use it for movement ed, and then the evening, potentially, the high school could use it for practices that may be necessary. So we'll see how that works out, if we can make that work, but I think that's one of the goals that I have anyway.
So I'm just thinking, if lights happen to be the issue that families are bringing up, then you could replace the Heritage Elementary Gym with purchasing of the lights, which is about $2 million. That will save you $500,000 if you did the lights in the fiscal year 2026 versus the gym. But if Dr. Gupta wants that, then I'm not gonna go against what he wants. It is what it is.
The will of the board, right? Yeah.
I'm just thinking about going into a new budget season. Well, obviously moving forward, but yeah. Okay.
Right. Cool. And the last, unless there's any questions on that, any more questions? And the last item is our capital funds. This is something we've tried to put forth. We've had it for a couple of years. And some years we've gotten funding, and some years we haven't. We like to have funds that are set aside for smaller projects or unplanned emergencies that do occur. Those of you who were on the board 2 years ago will recall our flood event at TC Miller and at RS Payne, as well as Dunbar as well. That was a great community effort to come out and provide space at the West Lynchburg Baptist Church and all this. But there was also a lot of money spent in order to repair those things. So these are the kind of things that we would, for electrical and mechanical issues that might come up, we would also have that money set aside. We'd also really like to get more intentional about interior painting and plaster repairs. So you've heard me talk over the last couple of years quite a bit about hopefully building envelope improvements. We say we're really trying to waterproof the buildings. Well, where we have had leaks and that sort of thing, we're trying to repair them. Now we want to go back and repair the plaster where they've had those leaks so it doesn't look terrible and it looks like a place that people want to be. We also really want to be much more intentional about painting the buildings, the interior of the buildings. If you've been in Dunbar Middle School since the beginning of school this year, I hope that you will note the incredible painting that our team did this summer in the classrooms. We transitioned from really a very dark and dingy feel to a bright, white, colorful feel. We think it's so much better for learning, so much better for students and staff to be in. Our friend Carl Luce was ecstatic about his room as well, so we're thrilled with that. At least that's what he told me. I hope that's
I was there today.
Yeah.
It was very nice. to
Good,
see.
good. I'm so glad.
Yeah, even they have, the eighth graders have a project of increasing the number of tiles in the ceiling as
Oh,
well.
yeah. Cool.
So I noticed that was increasing, just making, a bright, colorful environment.
That's right. It should be a happy place as well. We have another similar sort of general facility needs, similar to the first one, as things do come up throughout the year. Elementary playground improvements. These are where we add equipment and change out equipment on playgrounds in the elementary schools. The paving and fencing improvements. This is somewhere, Ms. Preston, we have used in the past to help us replace some of the tennis courts because it is just asphalt pretty much, and as well as the nets, the paint. So we've done some improvements there with that. So we will plan some of those out. We don't have those necessarily planned out in terms of projects, but Lincoln Middle it needs to be done. Sandusky needs to be at least resurfaced as well. So otherwise, we're getting to the point where the tennis courts are in pretty decent shape. We did EC Glass a couple of years ago. Heritage, of course, is still fairly new, although we'll need some stuff.
The public uses the tennis courts quite a bit.
Absolutely.
We do.
Yeah.
Have there been any requests for pickleball courts?
Yeah, we have a lot of people that play pickleball, which is great. Glad people are using it. The issue that we do have is that in some cases, people will pull the nets down to be able to use it. That stretches the nets and it causes a concern. So what we've done is, in the off season, we've left 2 or 3 courts with the nets left on. The rest of them that are used more for tennis team will be taken down, and we'll rotate those from year to year. So that way, hopefully, it will better maintain the net structure.
And I think they take them down sometimes, the guys that over there, they take them down and put them back and all that sort of stuff too.
Yeah. So great, glad people are using the facilities. It's really important, but definitely want to make sure they're maintained for the primary use. And the last one is the civic auditorium improvements. This relates to the EC Glass Auditorium. We've included that as a capital fund, but it may become an actual project that's specific. We've been working with the Ed Foundation. They've helped us fund a project to have a theater consultant come into the EC Glass Theater as well as the R.S. Payne, Dunbar, and Bass auditoriums, take a look at the technology, the safety equipment, everything that's in them, identify where improvements need to be made. Number one, again, to improve safety, but number two, of course, to really help us improve instruction, and in particular at Glass, identifying the technology that needs to be changed so that it can be a highly used rental facility. And so we've just gotten a little bit behind, particularly in terms of the lighting infrastructure that's there. Obviously, we're transitioning to LED. So if we get those estimates back soon, then we'll include that actually as a capital project as we go forward. Okay, so the last thing, and we think this is really important because we've been really intentional about trying to make sure that we are making investments throughout the city. Certainly, we're not doing exactly the same amount of dollars in every single school board district or city council ward. I'm not sure that you would be able to do that. But in particular, because of larger projects like the Sandusky project, you'll see that Ward 4 has a little bit more going on. But we want to really emphasize that we are proposing to make investments throughout the city, every single council ward as well as every single school board district as well. And we think that's really, really very important, and we've scheduled that out for the next really 7 years as well. So those are not duplicates of the numbers. The top half is school board districts, the bottom half is city council wards, just to make sure that people are.
Okay.
What's that?
It took me a minute to figure out, one is the,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we got 30 and 32, so I see, now it makes sense.
Yep. So, and then at the very bottom, just the citywide projects. Those are reflective of those capital funds that we mentioned before. Last slide is any questions you might have. What projects did we forget? We've identified a couple of them, and maybe we can provide some suggestions on how that might be done. Are there other conversations or additions that you would make, or reductions that you might identify? I know there's an alternative proposal. That would be a great thing to have a conversation about. So certainly would be happy to take any questions you may have at this point.
I have a couple questions, not about the specific projects here, but I assume some of these items are carryovers from previous years, and in all reality, some of these may be carried over again into the future. My point being that probably we won't get funding for all of these.
That's right. Yeah.
So we probably need to have some priorities assigned to these, which things are crisis level improvements,
Yeah.
and which things could we wait a year or two if our hand is forced by financial considerations. And the other thing I wanted to say is, it seems to me that the decisions about this need to be coordinated with the new strategic plan that we're supposed to develop this year, but we have hardly got off the ground on that yet. That falls to the board to do. You've told us that we will need to be voting on this next month, and that's very doubtful that we'll have a new strategic plan ready next month. So I'm just wondering, how are we going to handle because I don't think those two things are disjoint from each other.
Oh, I completely agree, and I appreciate the need to align those two documents. It's really critically important. The good news is that if you do at some point have to make a decision, but you'll create the strategic plan this year, you'll be doing the CIP process again next year. So it may change, and because we are appropriating, we appropriate from year to year. It doesn't, you could say, if you had said, you're going to do a project in 2029, if you then say, no, actually, we don't need to do that at this point, or we might do something different at that point, the funds haven't been appropriated yet. Obviously, the big question would be the new or renovated school, because that's just a very large amount. You also may say that maybe the appropriate time to appropriate those funds would be maybe not next year. That's what we've added in, because we thought that was at least the intent of the board, maybe if not the specific direction, but that was the intent. So you may make changes on that, or you may do a different process. So I think, taking that into account, I think is a very good thing to do. Just recognize that you're going to do it again next year.
Well, I guess to partially answer my own question is that what might happen is, assuming we do get a new strategic plan developed in a reasonable amount of time, that might just change our priorities among these projects. And that is much easier to go to City Council and say, look, we've submitted our CIP, but our previous priorities, we're now shifting. We're going to move these up to the top and these down to the bottom because of these decisions we've made in our strategic plan. Now, is there any more discussion about the things that Mr. Wartica has been addressing before we get to the other?
So can I ask just really quickly,
Yes.
just to make sure that my notes, because I was kind of scribbling them down. So the only project that we talked about adding potentially is additional parking at Heritage High School. Was there anything else that we should be including?
I didn't hear anything about our ideas discussing CTE room renovations and/or additions. I think we prefer the renovation versus an addition, but I didn't hear anything about that. And I think that if we're gearing our middle schools towards CTE for the high school's sake and so forth, that should be part of this discussion.
Okay.
We talked about that a year ago.
Yep.
At that time, what we said was we were going to emphasize not building a lot of new physical infrastructure for CTE, but develop existing programs. But maybe we're going to change that emphasis this year. But I'm just pointing out, a year ago, that was the direction we took, not to emphasize a lot of new construction for CTE specifically.
So just so I make sure I know, so I heard you say middle school, so is that sort of the priority now? And then we would do maybe high school later on if we do it changes to rooms that maybe existing footprint? Is that what you?
Yes, because we have what we have in the high schools right now. The middle schools is what's lacking. So we need to start there at some point. Two more little things. I noticed that we have more elementary schools than other schools, and the budget for the elementary school playgrounds was the lowest amount that I saw, 0.10, but you have so many playgrounds to deal with. And playgrounds, when I was a kid, was a big draw to go to school. So if you want to increase the attendance rate in the schools, I think putting a little more emphasis on making playgrounds fun again, I'm kidding, making playgrounds really an attractive center point of an elementary school. I just keep coming back to that. I know that you can build specialties playgrounds and have inner groups come in that do that for professional ways.
You are speaking my language.
Yeah, I love that. And the last and related to that is I think a lot of these schools even though we have to focus on improving the HVAC and all those things, when you get to the painting side of things, things that we can have flexibility on, red, green, and yellow doors are fun. I think an elementary school should be almost like what is that factory with Charlie, type of, at least oriented towards that, instead of the same formations over and over again and the same color schemes all the time. If you just have a little innovation, a little creativity, you can create these little fun places for kids to come. And it just creates a culture and an environment, I think, that can make learning more fun.
Yeah, we have a lot of taupe and tan around.
We do. It should be a total.
Don't tell Don because he's
miniature Orlando world.
He's a taupe kind of guy.
Yeah,
we've really made a change there. That's I mentioned Dunbar, and we've really been intentional about color and bright colors in those spaces. So as we continue to go through this, I absolutely fully agree with that.
Okay, anything else? If not, do you want to talk about
Please.
The other plan that's here?
The other plan. Okay. Old eyes, they change. So I'm going to be going back and forth here. You've seen my numbers. I'm not going to go line by line with them. I'll summarize for you. As you can see, my point still is, that we were, I don't want to say charged, but we had the general tenor of city council saying that we don't have the money. We had to do something. That was a message I pretty much understood. I don't know if everyone else on the board agrees with that, but when they say you're not getting additional funding, that means that they're not allocating the funds for us. I looked at a lot of different things, and one of the issues was when it came up to close certain schools, we didn't have a plan. We left it up to the administration to come up with a plan. This is what the goal is. We can see it as a savings of money. And in as much as I really appreciate the proactive approach of the administration with the construction, we came up with the idea, Anthony came up with the idea of building a new school. A few days later, I'll just say 9 days later, we came up, there were a bunch of choices for us, and the forward thinking that if you don't like this, you can have that. Well, we had 9 months to come up with a plan based on what the school board said, to consolidate. It was a general plan. It was just open. We're not an operating board. We're a supervisory board. We had 9 months to put together an idea. And I know that there were roadblocks. What do you do if, different issues needed to be solved first? But the forward thinking, the proactive approach that I would have appreciated was, if you do this, you can do that. So that didn't happen, and that's okay. My idea here, to consolidate T.C. Miller and Sandusky, move them into the middle school, split up the remainder of the 6th grade class, having elementary now in Sandusky Middle be a K through 6 school. Through the other changeover of different, where we could put the additional 6th graders, might be in the middle school, and middle school could be from 6 to 8. When I grew up, middle school was 7 to 9. There's other places that have middle school 7 to 9, and they have elementary as K through 6. The numbers speak for themselves. And the way in which I can see where space is available is at the very end of this. But much in the ways Dr. Dill mentioned, that discipline is an issue. It's a very important issue that helps with the grades and learning process. None of this can be done, none of this should be done, unless we provide more room for the alternative education options. 4 different options, 4 different schools, restorative, whether it be Pride, whatever the programs are. I've been looking and talking with people in that department, Dr. Brown's department, that said if we had a centralized location, we could cut down on the math teachers that are at each individual school, cut down on other teachers at each individual school, if we had them all in one place. If they could be utilized for all the different grades in the alternative education programs. Now, doing all of these, the numbers work. If you take a look at the capacity at T.C. Miller, we could take all the programs that would be considered alternative education, and we can put them in that school. Now, it's important that there's certain students that we need to take special care of. They can't be in overcrowded classrooms. I understand that. But for other students, let's say some of the sixth graders aren't ready to go to the junior high level, staying in elementary could be an option for them. Expanding other schools to include a sixth grade, other elementary schools to include a sixth grade class is another option for these students not to go into the advanced set, a more mature setting of the way our current middle school exists. So again, we have to take the discipline, the students with discipline issues need to be separated out so that people are able to learn. When there's a discipline situation, that's taking 20 to 30 minutes out of the classroom. We on the discipline board, we've seen some things that are fairly serious. And when you talk to the teachers and you talk to students and they are afraid to go into the classroom because of certain situations that are occurring, we need to take care of that. The issue of having a classroom that's 21 students versus 28, absolutely a better situation. But it doesn't make a difference if we still have a serious discipline problem. You can have a classroom with no discipline problems of 28 students having a better effect, having a better result than a classroom of 21 and having serious discipline problems. My point is that if we can go ahead and move in this direction, we're going to take care of discipline issues. We're going to give the alternative ed and Dr. Brown's programs the space that they need. And then when we need more, we can use temporary classrooms. This program is the plan, possibly, one plan that can be modified, can be improved upon, but this is just a couple steps towards the goal of utilizing the funds that City Council has allocated to us. If we can't get them to give us any more, we're stuck in a situation. The only other two is to have them generate the funds. My idea, either you need to raise taxes and get them back to where it is going to be able to fund this, or take Region 2000 landfill, take it back, put a casino, put some sort of business, use other people's money. There's only so much we can do to raise our tax base. If we use other people's money to fund our schools like other municipalities have done, we're in a better situation. So we can't do that. We can't even have a bake sale. We can't sell those little coupon books to raise money for what we need. We don't have that power. City Council has to do one of three things. If they keep it where it's at, we are limited in scope. If they raise taxes, I know it's not politically favorable, but that's the only way they're going to generate funds for this. Or bring in a business that is going to fund it. What we need to do is come up with a program that is going to be used in the event that we don't get the funding that this city school system needs. Anthony, I'll work with you. You know I'll work with you to make the best school possible with the funds that they give us. Your idea is great. It's necessary. Maybe not today, but it's going to be needed down the road. I agree with you. The point is, you're a little short in the amount of money that we need. 50 million? Okay, fine. We're going to need double that. We're not going to get it, but at least we can start working towards it and start managing as we need it, because the students are going to need to be moved some way, somehow. And we need to have that focused upon the inevitable situation of needing new schools and having them built sooner as opposed to later, but once we get the funding. But we don't have it today. We need to make moves to save money today. This will save money.
Okay. Anyone have questions or comments about this?
In a paragraph, can you summarize all this? There's a couple of different things, different line trains I've been following from what you said. Just summarize your overall change.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
Okay. T.C. Miller, Sandusky Elementary are moved to Sandusky Middle.
The students there are moved.
Yes, not the buildings, the students. Middle school students are divvied up between,
Lincoln and Dunbar.
thank you. At that point, we're going to have a leftover of, we're going to have, I think it ends up being like 93 based on last year's numbers. We don't have the September 30th number, filing numbers for this year's yet. That can be taken care of by any number of the other schools. At the very bottom, they can be taken care of with other schools. I'm giving you the concise paragraph. We move, at that point, once we divvy up the sixth graders into the other middle schools or elementary schools, we take every one of Dr. Brown's programs and move them into T.C. Miller. At that point, we can consolidate staff. And that's the end of the paragraph. Not the caveat, but the further explanation would be 81% or so of our budget is salaries. Across the board, it's salaries. 81% of the total budget is people, their lives. They are people who are, they're human beings who are putting food on their tables. That's where that's where we need to consolidate facilities, to consolidate our assets, our people, in order to make this work. Because if we can't move, at least to start, if we can't move Dr. Brown's programs into T.C. Miller or one consolidated place, don't vote on this, because it's not going to save. It will save a little, but not enough to make this work and be feasible. So that's the paragraph, the first part, and the caveat to that is we're going to have to consolidate positions.
But I was thinking about this. We would need to keep all the positions we have, because once you move those students and those programs, they need to follow, with the teachers need to follow those children with those programs.
Some programs, yes, other programs, no.
Like what they were talking about at Sandusky Middle, and all the things that they've achieved in working with those children, and some of those programs need to follow them. They need to go with them.
Every school should have those programs.
Yeah.
Those are great programs. And that's the same thing with, I bring up about, have brought up about Bass. It's a year-round school. Is it good? Is it great? Or is it something that we shouldn't be doing? If it's great, then every school should be year-round. If it's not, maybe we should change Bass also. What is Bass? Is it the epitome of what we were trying to accomplish? If it is, let's move it more. The same thing I'm going to say about about Sandusky Middle and those programs. That's something that should be for every school. They're great. That should be for every school. You have the people that are the students who are happy to be going to school. Not every student is the same, but if they're happy there, make it throughout the entire system. If it's working, people are happy there, they're not happy other places, expand those programs.
And the one thing I was thinking, when you have, the reason we would need to keep everybody and nobody lose anything is because when you start something new like that, you don't know where your holes are going to show up. So we need to keep everybody because we need them in place for those students. If they were in place for those students at one school, they'll need to be in place for those students as they're spread out as well. So you're going to need your faculty and staff that are one place in other places, because we don't know where the hole is, and then we can reevaluate after the first year and say, oh, okay, so this part here worked, but we need to adjust here and here and here. So I wouldn't be in favor of getting rid of anybody, because we need everybody.
You're talking about the middle schools, yes. I'm talking about the education, the alternative education portion. We're going to be consolidating positions there. Eventually, there will be consolidation of positions other places.
Okay, yeah,
There
we're talking about two
eventually
different
will.
things, yeah.
And we can find those, but those are two different points.
yeah,
Excellent point. Yes, we have to start there, but this is the first step. Yes, sir.
So I want to make sure I recap. So T.C. Miller and Sandusky
Elementary,
go to Sandusky Middle.
yes.
The kids at Sandusky Middle, the 7th and 8th graders, will go to Dunbar and Lincoln.
Yes.
The current 6th graders will be spread over the non-elementary schools that you got listed.
Potentially.
And then alternative education is going to be housed at T.C. Miller.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, you said spread out amongst the other students. We may be able to take all those extras into one school, because there's space. If it's 90 and we have 177 available to capacity, that would fit into Bedford Hills. That's if we have, once again, we have to look at the numbers. This is based on numbers and enrollment.
what's the capacity in Pride? Because if we had one single alternative ed school, those Pride students could move to that same
That's my
location.
point.
That opens up those classrooms in Pride.
And the GED program should be at TC Miller.
At
It
the
could be
new
all
alternative
different
education school.
Yeah, the new, make it new. Ideas, please.
Mr. Tinsley?
So, I mean, I truly applaud the solution-based approach. I mean, we do need to find a solution. I mean, there has to be an answer to this equation, right, that is presented before us. I do hesitate, though, and I'll say why in a second, I do hesitate to jump and make another, vote on something else and move into another plan before we've even submitted our CIP, before city council's even taken a look at this. We don't know what they're thinking. I mean, we kind of have some assumptions about what they're thinking, but I believe we need to submit the CIP, put this before city council, let them wrestle with this and give us an answer. They need to tell us no, I think, before we jump onto another plan. Secondly, and more importantly, real quick analogy. We all were around, I think, when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded, and the investigation incurred after that. Beautiful, wonderful, one of the greatest machines that man has ever invented to do some phenomenal things. One O-ring, one piece of rubber caused that whole vessel to explode, and for a program to shut down for 3 years and never regain its popularity with the nation. My point is, it's the little things that matter, and I don't want us to make another decision based on anecdote. I want us to have the full picture, second and third order effects, pros and cons of any decision we go to from here. I think before, Daryl, some of the questions you've asked, some of the other questions have been asked, these are the kinds of questions we need to ask before we have the vote. And so I'm not going to make a motion yet, but I think we need to think about sending our intelligent, wonderful school board staff, Mr. Woodick or Dr. Woodick and his team, and the great work, to go back and take a look at pros and cons, second, third order effects of a decision like this, and come back to report to us. This is what you're looking at if you do this. Now, it may be that we find, hey, this is a great, wonderful plan. It's going to work. This would be the thing. But the things we need to think of, it's transportation, right? It's the Civil Rights Act. It's size of classrooms. Because, folks, I'm telling you, I agree, discipline's an issue for it. But you increase these classrooms, research says you're going to have more discipline. So where you fix it in one area, you increase it in another. These are the second and third order effects. These folks, and I'm not just trying to pat one guy on the back, you have to do this with whoever's sitting here. They've done EDD work, right? Educational doctorates, research in areas like this. They know they know this business. Unlike any of us at this table, save a few.
Yeah.
And I want to hear, what are we getting into if we make this vote? Because I'll be honest with you, I think we made the vote to rescind very hastily. Now, I'm not saying it was the wrong vote. I'm not saying it was the wrong decision. But we made that vote pretty hastily. And I don't want to do that again. I think our administrators, I think our teachers, our principals, our parents, and our community deserve better from us as a board. We need to make informed decisions.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
And I totally agree with everything you said. And one of the things we are going to need to speak to the community first.
Right.
I think one of the mistakes that was made last time is community. I mean, every meeting I was watching on, it was packed, and they were all upset and angry. But what I do like about your proposal is T.C. Miller. But I would simplify it. I like your proposal to build a new Sandusky. Then I was looking at the space left in Sandusky. I was saying, hey, well, we might can move some of the Sandusky Elementary and the Sandusky Middle building where there's some space and some portable classrooms while we build, if we go after building or renovating Sandusky, $30 million. Ask them. We have not because we ask not. But the T.C. Miller piece, I could see, one of the issues is Darrington has space. Darrington is a school for innovation. Why can't Darrington be the school for innovation? So the T.C. Miller School for Innovation kids go to Darrington. We're bringing them from all over town anyway. They all go to Darrington. Everything innovative is there, and it is the crown jewel of school for innovation. That leaves the zoned T.C. Miller kids, which some of them can go to R.S. Payne, some of them can go to Perrymont, and some of them go to Sheffield, equally distributed, and it won't affect the zoning issues because they would be within a certain distance of their existing home and school. I'll say that we have a way to make T.C. Miller our, quote, alternative education jewel, where we can really meet the needs of, that's why so I'm glad you asked him, because I had wrote it down. And I showed it to him so he could see that I had already wrote it down. Space needed. Space needed. So one of our biggest issues, because they're having success in alternative education with what Dr. Glover is doing, and if he had the space, who knows how much more that could be. So I can see if we come up with a proposal that will open up T.C. Miller and ask for $30 million to renovate or, Sandusky, who can poke holes in that?
Now, you see what we're doing? This is exactly what I want to happen. We don't need it was a motion to move it forward, but we're now discussing, which we weren't doing 6 months ago. This is what we need to do. We need to do, and we don't need to do one thing at a time. We can do both of these things and discuss this and have conversation about it. You've come up with, this is just that improved upon the idea. I had no idea, I had no expectation that mine was the best idea to going forward. But what we're doing is we're discussing it now. I want it on the agenda for discussion. I want it on the agenda to be voted upon when we do come up with a plan that's going to be bulletproof. We need to do this. We need to do something. And we failed to do it for the last 9 months. We need to do something now. And if it's discussing, and then we get the money, great, we can shelve it. If we discuss it and we don't get the money, or if we don't get the money, we're already ahead of the game.
Okay, so, go ahead.
I would say to your point, I think the joint meeting that's coming up would be the optimal time to have a conversation. I mean, I don't know what's on the agenda in terms of joint session, but council's there, we are there. To me, that would be an opportunity for you to share your plan, right? And for us to have those conversations and ask those tough questions across the aisle and say, hey, what do you guys think in terms of likelihood of this happening? What are your ideas? And it becomes a collaborative thing with the city. Then it's more than just the school board owning this. It's the city owns it, right? It's a community, and then like to Mr. Connor's point, you have public comment, right? You invite the people to come in and talk about, how it, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, how it affects their families, whatever. And we could fill those holes up with
Absolutely.
Solutions, right? And so, yeah.
This also gives us an opportunity for the suggestion, the plan, to get out in the community so people can express their opinions. Because I think a big problem with the previous idea was that people felt like it was just being put upon them without any discussion or any input from them. And as you said, just talking among the people in this room, the plan has changed.
Yes.
Over a period of time. The more of us that have conversations about it, the more of us are going to give input, and the better the ideas are going to become, rather than it just being one person's idea that nobody really liked, but we just voted on it because. I think this is, as you said, this is what needs to happen, so that everybody has an opportunity to say, I don't want my kids to do this, or I do want them to do this, or this is a better plan as far as I'm concerned, as far as the education of my children or the education in this community. So I applaud you for at least thinking along those lines, but getting the ideas out there so people have an opportunity to comment In addition to the fact that that means that when you go to the school board, if there is a
City council.
plan, a consensus, when we, yeah, right, when we go to the city council, there's a consensus, at least somewhat of a consensus, so that everybody's on the same team. And they'll hear us as a whole, not those bad guys at school board that decided to do A, B, and C.
Well, I submitted my T.C. Miller alternative school proposal to the board chair and the board and assistant chair, and I'm, hopefully maybe it'll be brought up on our next meeting for further discussion.
Yep, absolutely.
Exactly.
So here's what I'm hearing. Dr. Woodica presented us with the CIP plan that they've developed, assuming the decision about facilities that is the current one based on the board's decisions, which was to pursue rebuilding Sandusky. Now, what we've done here is we've opened up the discussion of alternatives to that, right?
Yes.
The particular plan you've been looking into, and it sounds like other people have other ideas that might be a little bit different from that. So we seem to be opening up
Yes, we are.
that whole conversation again. Now, my question is, okay, if we're going to do that, what do we do next? Do we flesh out pros and cons of your plan?
Absolutely.
Do we invite people to put other proposals on the table, like you were just saying? What does the board want to do next if we're going to carry that facilities discussion forward, even though the current CIP is based on a particular plan for the future? The reason we're opening it up is because we realize that the financial realities may prevent us from, the financial realities may make it impossible to proceed with rebuilding Sandusky, in which case we need to have some other alternatives. And so I think what we're talking about is developing some of those other alternatives.
Yes.
So what I'm asking you is, what does the board need to do next about this?
I would say the best thing is to continue discussion. You know what, I sent this information out. Again, not expecting it to be the end all. If it was, I think it'd work. But anyways, we got people piping in right now. We got people talking about it. Thank you very much. This is the beginning of what the product is going to produce. So discussing, having more.
So you want continued discussion at board meetings, or?
Yes.
In the past, we haven't done it so much the last year or so. The board had retreats that were, longer periods focused on hashing out ideas on a particular topic. I mean, is that something you want to contemplate?
We haven't, in the past 9 months, we haven't gotten as far as we got tonight.
And this will give the public an opportunity to put forth their own proposals and alternatives
do
to
you-
what you've put forth.
They did last year. That's what they did.
I'm not pushing anything. I want to know
No, I
what
know.
the board needs to do here. We have continued sessions like this in our meetings to hash through ideas?
I think that'd be great. Put that on the agenda.
One more time.
I think Dr. Tiz.
Doctor,
Please.
Yeah, so here would be my proposal, would be that we've opened up the discussion. So we make that, the public should know about that. I don't know how we can market that, advertise that. And, we'll have a public comment session coming up at our next board meeting. The public can come up, they can say whatever they want. They can propose their own plans, their ideas, things that they would like to see happen. I think we should, at the next couple of board meetings, maybe keep hashing around some ideas. We might want to set a date where, okay, we need to have our ideas fleshed out by this date. If we want to do that at board meetings, work sessions, a retreat of some sort, I think we just need to decide that. But once we've come up with what we believe is a consensus, that this is what the direction we'd like to go, before we vote on it, I do believe that needs to be put forward to our administration for the pros and cons, the second, third order effects study, to see if that's a viable solution. Because I just don't think we have the expertise nor the time to do that ourselves. And they can come back to us, report back and say, this will work, this won't work, we can tweak our plan, and then vote on it.
Well, and again, I think this is part of developing our strategic plan for the
Exactly.
next
And
5
then
years.
It hits that it hits that point as well. And this becomes part of our strategic plan.
And I think one of the things that we are meeting, not just the financial need, but we need to find a way to meet a educational need for these children.
And this is part of the strategic
You know,
plan.
when we got hit with, we just found out about the space limitations at Fort Hill. And it really hit hard, like, okay, we gotta do something, because it's working. It's helping students. You can't, we're sending some of them home because there's no space for them. We gotta come, so if my proposal, which is part of your proposal, is a place for these students where we can educate. I think, like they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. I think we need to come up with a way to do that.
And the thing that bothers me the most are the kids that are put in home study. We're losing them.
We're losing.
We can't afford to lose them. You either pay now or you pay later. Sure, we have the penal system that will take care of them for us, but we don't want
That's
that.
not what we want to do.
We don't want it. You pay now, or we're gonna pay 5, 10 times more later.
Dr. Tinsley, would you be okay waiting until after joint session?
I think that would be key. Yeah, I think we need to hear from council too. And I think this goes back to one of the teachers or one of the administrators said tonight. There needs to be more collaboration between the school board and city council. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think I said that in my interview. And I believe that getting their input as well as the public's input, as well as along our administration's input, letting all these voices be heard before we make any decisions about where we're going next. I sense that that's the complaint about maybe the way things have happened in the past, and I'm not putting any date on the past. Yeah,
Okay.
is people don't feel that they're heard. Let's hear them. Let's hear everybody.
Dr. Day, would it be okay for me to forward that proposal to Dr. Wodeker so he can see how that might fit in with what they?
Which proposal are you?
You haven't even probably seen it yet. It's in your email. It's the proposal that I have to how to convert T.C. Miller with moving the innovative students to one jewel of an innovative school, and then
Well, what I do want to do is be respectful of Dr. Wodeker's time and not throw a half dozen things at him and ask him
That's
to
why I'm
evaluate
asking.
all of them. So I would like it to be a board decision if we're going to ask him and the staff to prepare an analysis of anything, and rather than each of us throwing our own idea at him and expect him to respond to all of them. I think that's just not fair to him. So, I mean, you're free to send your proposal to anyone you want, but I don't think until the board makes a decision, we think this is viable enough to pursue at a detailed level, and then I think the board should decide rather than us individually expecting Dr. Wodeker to respond.
I wasn't looking for a response, but, what I'm saying is, in this proposal, we're going to go to the city and ask them for millions of dollars. At the same time, they're going to ask us, what else have we done to modify our current situation? I think that was the resistance we got last time we went before them. They were like,
Right.
so we just closing, it's like we didn't have all the answers. So I'm saying as part of this proposal, if he were to look at it and see, like I say, mine is pretty simple. It answers one of his big questions. We got to come up with and it's just not in the news. It's not the big thing, but we got to answer the question of Fort Hill and alternative education, the restorative center. We got to answer that question because those are the children that are suffering. So I'm saying that I just for him to look at it. He doesn't have to. I mean, you can say no and I'm done. But I think we have to come up with a way to meet these alternative education situations so that we can bring those children up.
You're gonna
along
get-
with the other children.
Let's talk amongst each other before we give it to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think whatever we give to Dr. Wodeker and his team needs to be what we vote on as our proposed solution.
Absolutely.
And then he can do the hard work one time.
That's
And
what
then
I'm trying to say.
they can bring back a proposal to us of any.
So I
edits,
think at this
changes.
point,
What we need to take to the city.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Waste,
yeah,
And that other thing is that we need to remember is the strategic plan that we come up with and everything has to be done in a way that isn't the budget ending, or we have to give it the budget, the deadline is like end of October, beginning of November. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can't take all month to do it, because we're on time schedule.
And I personally am not willing to move forward on any of this until the 5th paragraph spells Sandusky correctly, sir. So I will point that out to you and make sure
Are
that
you referring to the,
his
Mr. DePaul's write-up?
That's correct. It's Sandusky on here.
Jeez. You know.
So can I ask a question? So when we come back on October 1st, so we'll bring this back October 1st. We'll include a couple of projects that we added for your consideration. And at that point, there will be a discussion to give guidance, or, because so I'm sorry to go back to this, but there is this timeline, right?
Right.
So I just want to make sure that we are moving in that right direction. Definitely appreciate the, encourage that conversation, and I'm glad that you're having it, but I just want to make sure I know what I'm supposed to be doing right now for next meeting. Does that make?
I think so. I'm not, if I were you, I'd be very confused right now.
So
I think you've put together the CIP proposal based on this, the board's currently endorsed facilities plan. And the board is realizing that that may not be possible, that there might be some alternatives that we ought to be considering instead. And if we actually change course and move to a new facilities plan, that would certainly change the CIP plan. So what Dr. Wood is asking is, what should he do? Yeah.
He's got it. He's got it, his CIP.
All right.
If you can put some ideas together about these, even before we officially give you marching orders, if you have some time to do that, that might be helpful, or that would be helpful.
I don't know what that means, but.
It means exactly what I said. I mean, you have our ideas. We have several ideas here. What can be done with this in the event that we don't get $60 million?
Sure, and I just feel compelled to say this. So what I would request in this process, and we will do whatever work needs to be done at all times. We will work as hard as we need to. What I would ask of the board, and what I would appreciate, is that when we do this work, I would just appreciate an assumption of objectivity in this, that we're doing our best to be objective, right? Because I just want to make sure that if I come up with on your proposal, if it's 6 cons and 5 pros, I want to make sure that the assumption is we're doing our very best to be objective. I hope that's a fair request.
You don't want to be accused of sandbagging it and
Right.
in the objective information
Yep.
bring forward. I understand.
Absolutely.
That's fair.
Okay. Yes, please.
So, obviously, the CIP is not a separate issue. They all tie in. But in some ways, I think we can treat it as a separate issue temporarily. Because, let's say, for example, City Council gives us everything we're looking for. They say, yeah, we're going to do it, right? Well, that kind of solves our problem, right? If they don't, and let's say the other end of the spectrum, they say, we're not giving you anything towards a new school, or we're going to take, then that sends us back to the drawing board anyway, right? So my point is, I think we could vote on the CIP and send that forward to City Council and still work this plan. We're pretty sure, or there's a lot of assumption anyway, that City Council is going to push back on the new school project. And we'll just be further down the road of coming up with a plan for this.
So we're going to continue with the current CIP plan, but we are also contemplating some alternatives to that
Right.
at the same time.
I think we can, they're not separate, but I think temporarily we can treat them as 2 separate things so that he can move forward and get meet the deadlines that he needs
And
to.
we will continue to discuss this at our future meetings.
And we'll promote having some citizen involvement in the conversation.
Absolutely.
So we have an idea of what their thoughts are about the plan.
So
Because
if-
again, I think when we go to the council, if we're all on the same sheet of music,
Exactly.
that's gonna make their argument a little bit more difficult.
Okay, so are you talking about orchestrating a bunch of community meetings?
Well, I think making sure that people in the community know what conversation is taking place. Now, how we do that, I'm not sure. I mean, they film part of this meeting, I guess, and
Film
so
the
there
whole
are some
thing.
people, and so some people are gonna be aware of it anyway. And I suppose if there's somebody of importance that you think we need to have that conversation with, whether that's with a news entity or TV station or whatever, so that the word gets out there, then that's only gonna promote that. I know that, Mr. McCain was here, for example, and if there was something specific that he could promote in his conversations with people, that would be helpful as well. Because I think the more the word gets out there and the more conversation happens, the more likely we're gonna get some input that's gonna
I understand that. What I'm trying to get at, are you asking that this school board do something specific to promote those conversations?
I don't know. What do you think?
I'd say no.
One of the things I wanted to make sure is that, as far as this whole thing is, it's in the agenda that says this item will appear for approval October 1st. So we won't be voting on it today.
Well, not my part, but on the CIP, we could separate
Well,
that
I think that's the CIP.
Yes.
That's the
That's the
CIP.
CIP.
part. Dr. Wooldick and Mr. Floyd will overview. This item will appear for approval October 1st. So we won't be voting on his CIP proposal tonight anyway.
Right,
Right. So,
Yeah, we need to get going on the rest of our agenda here this evening. We can't take all evening on this.
So we don't have to vote on this.
No, there's no action on this right now. I'm just trying to clarify what the board needs to do going forward. Can we move on to the next item on our agenda?
Yes.
Sir. Okay. Which is the Human Resources Report.
Yeah, I believe Ms. Shepherd said that this would be the last meeting where we would have last work session, I should say, where we would have the Human Resources Report, because we're still hiring folks. And you can see on the report, there are two folks that we are hiring, one being a BCBA.
Okay. So you want to make a motion to,
Well, is this is,
because I've seen them.
oh, it is an action item. So what is it what action are we taking? Just accepting the report?
The two nominations.
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right. So, do we have a motion to accept those
Motion
two
to
nominations?
accept.
Any discussion?
Who's second?
No discussion? If
need to
there's no
choose.
discussion, can we please call the roll?
Mr. Connor?
yes.
Mr. Gilio?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes?
Mrs. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie?
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The crisis communication, we've postponed to our next meeting. So we're now at H1, the curriculum and instruction policy updates. Mrs. Pugh.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Day. On September the 9th, the Curriculum and Instruction Policy Work Group met. These are five policies that came from VSBA with suggested updates. Some are in response to some Virginia code that has been implemented due to the passing of some House and Senate bills. Some of them are just strictly wording updates. The first one, IA, Instructional Goals and Objectives. There is a new code in Virginia based on the passing of House bill and Senate bill that need to comply with the addition of some career and technical opportunities with they're forming this Career and College Ready Virginia program, which includes a passport program, which is establishing, this is in section 10 and 11 of the policy, establishing some new partnerships and some new opportunities to make sure that all of our students have opportunities to have some dual enrollment classes at certified and qualified community colleges around the Commonwealth. The other piece of the code that passed is in response to the new Virginia Literacy Act. And so Section 19 is in response to that the board develops a program of literacy instruction that is aligned with the science-based reading research and provides evidence-based literacy instruction to students K through 8. So the changes to this policy are in direct reflection of the enactment of this code.
I had a question. In item 13, it's, all the references to reading have been deleted.
Yes, because there is a newly proposed policy that we're going to get to that talks about specific reading. So VSBA is suggesting that because there's a new proposed policy that deals just with programs for students with reading deficiencies, that you can take the word reading out of this policy.
Okay. I kind of suspected it would be something like that. Okay.
Can I, back to this passport program. So this is saying it's opening it up to more students for dual enrollment courses, or?
Yes, to enroll in post-secondary coursework offered at community colleges that are creditable through high school completion, and then can get certificates, degrees. So it's early college dual enrollment. And this part of the bill does not go into effect until 25, 26.
Okay.
So there's still a lot that's, and I can certainly provide you all a copy with that bill, but there's a lot that needs to be established. The state's establishing an advisory committee to work on the development of this passport program and all of the details of this Virginia Ready program. So the details coming from the bill have not been fully established, but we will have the resources and means in place to make sure that we're able to implement it in 25, 26. Yes.
Points. The very first part bothers me, that saying that the school board shall. The reason that it bothers me is any community college, I think that we should be able to retain the ability to discern. Is this going to include eventually online classes? They might not come up to the standards that we want for the students. That's number one. This shall part obligates future boards, future city councils to fund something that they might not be funding or should be funding elsewhere. Again, this is about the word shall. And at the very end, it makes a reference to aligned with science-based reading research. We've seen science change over this past, since COVID. Everyone has a different science. So what is the science base? This does not define, leaves it open, and obligates, if not hamstrings, future school boards that in order to do something that's more appropriate at that time, we'd be violating our own policy. So shall is my operative word here. I would want a different word.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. And I certainly understand your concern there with the word shall. Based on Virginia code, the shall it's not optional for us. So Virginia code is telling us that these are the things that we need to implement based on the passing of this House and Senate bill.
Well, if it's something that we're obligated to do, that's one thing.
It is,
To
yes,
put
sir.
to put it into our policy, saying that we shall, there's got to be a better option.
You're saying that VSBA is putting the verbiage of the policy that the state has given us?
Yes, this is, we currently have policy IA. VSBA is suggesting updates based on this new code, and the word shall is currently in our policy IA. So VSBA is not changing the word shall. The green implement instead of implements. So shall is already, maybe not. I take that back. I'm sorry. Shall is a new word in this particular policy, but that's because it's based on code.
There is code for the science-based, I think you.
Correct. So
that's
both
in
of
there.
these are based on this new passing of the House bill, and I can certainly share that with you. But both, it addresses, the first part of it addresses the CTE piece with College and Career Ready Virginia, and then the second piece of the code talks about science-based reading research. That's also part of the Virginia Literacy Act, which is part of our school literacy plan that the school board has already adopted. So both of those are required by law.
And I was going to say, remember last year they brought us the science of reading with the intertwined ropes? Remember that? They brought us to this. That's the science of reading that's being followed right now. So.
Scarborough's road.
Okay.
Any other?
And these are not up, these are just for first read tonight. So if there's concerns and questions, you can certainly
So this is not an
discuss
action
that.
item?
No, not
No,
now.
not
It's a
tonight.
discussion item tonight.
Just discussion.
Now, you said that there were some things that were uncertain about the code changes in Richmond. Would, once those things get resolved, might that affect the wording of this further?
No, I don't think there are things that are unsure. I think that there are steps within this bill that have not yet been completed at the state level that determine those partnerships and things like that. And again, I think perhaps if I make a copy of the bill and send that to Dr. Edwards and she can share that with you in her communication this week, you can read through that and have a better understanding. We talked about it in the policy committee. The changes for the Virginia Career Ready don't go into effect until 25-26. The changes for this policy for the science-based reading research, that is already in effect. So we could certainly, modify the pieces of this that are in section, I think it's 10 and 11. We could leave that out for right now if you're not comfortable with that, because that will not be implemented until 25-26. It's not ready to be implemented yet at the state level. Piece in section 19 needs to be implemented because we are underneath the Virginia Literacy Act. Again, it's also addressed in this new Virginia code.
Sounds fine to me.
So, again, I'm not asking you to vote on it tonight, I'm asking you to think about it, and Dr. Tinsley and Ms. Lowry are on the policy work group, and they thought we could just bring it as it was. But I'm certainly open to changes.
So I guess I would say that board members should continue to think about this in light of what Mrs. Pugh has said. And when will these policies come back to the board for action?
The first.
1st of October.
1st of October. So typically, we bring them to a work session, and that's first discussion amongst the full board and
All right.
voting on the regular meeting.
All right. Can we go on to the next one?
We certainly can.
All right.
The next one is notification of learning objectives, and again, this is just simple. Instead of having boards, it says school board, which is in reference to this school board, and they're changing standards for accreditation. It's now standards of accreditation. So again, this is just two
Pretty
minor
trivial
wording changes.
Wording changes, yeah.
Yes. The next one is the brand-new one, programs for students with reading deficiencies. Again, this is it reflects the changes in the Virginia Literacy Act, which has been passed across the Commonwealth. We have a literacy plan that the board has passed. This talks about the reading intervention services that we need to provide for students in K through 8 who demonstrate substantial deficiencies based on their performance of the standards of learning. So in the Virginia Literacy Act and in those guidelines, there are specific standards that if a student is not up to those standards, they're considered to be substantially show substantial deficiencies, and then they need to have an individualized reading plan, and this policy talks about how that plan needs to be implemented. So this is a brand-new policy that VSBA is suggesting is implemented in response to the Virginia Literacy Act.
What section of the act is this responding to?
I'd have to look that up.
Is it referenced in this?
You can see the bill references here, HB 3019, Senate Bill 1175.
Right. There are codes. Now, I can certainly share with you the Virginia Literacy Act document that we got, the guidance, but there, it talks about specifically having individualized reading plans for students who show significant deficiencies. And I believe that was shared prior, but we can certainly share that again.
Certainly.
No questions. We can certainly move on. IKF, the Virginia Assessment Program. Again, this is addressing two sections. One is addressing children of certain federal employees, and that is, I believe it's Title 22 and Title 50, and so those are diplomatic positions, as well as national defense positions, and so this is, again, in reference to a change in the code and updated in the code. Yes?
Just want to make very clear, this does not involve military. Military falls under Title 32 and Title 10 of the U.S. Code.
Right.
So when she says national defense, she's talking about civilian employees, not military.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes. Yep.
And I have
Title II is diplomatics or consular services, and then Title 50 is national defense, not military.
I just noticed a simple typo.
Okay.
In the second bullet, under children of certain federal employees, it should say end of course, but it just says N of course. There's a D missing.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that to
Yeah.
my attention. So that is being added there. The second piece that's being changed is understanding standard unit of credit. We are taking out a standard unit of credit may be awarded based on a waiver of 140 clock hour requirements. And again, then number 4 underneath that is just in direct relationship to that. So we are no longer, based on code, allowed to provide a waiver. So our students need to sit for any high school credit course. It needs to be 140 clock hours. So again, this is all referenced by updates to code.
We used to waive it by how?
Since I've been in this role, we've not ever waived it, but you would waive it based on the student being able to do a different performance assessment. So you might, yeah, you might look at how they've performed throughout the time that they've been in the course, and if they can show mastery of that without having the 140 clock hours, then we certainly could have waived those. But to my knowledge, since I've been in this seat, we've not done that. Yes?
Is that for all, even special education, and that's for everyone?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And the last one is IKFA, locally awarded verified credits. This is a policy that we currently have. I believe it was last updated in January of 2023. Right now, as it stands, this allows us to award locally verified credits based on a review panel. So if a student takes a course and there's an associated SOL test at the end of the course and they don't pass it, even if they pass the course but they don't pass the SOL, they need to continue to take that SOL until they pass it to get the verified credit that's needed to graduate. This policy says that under some certain circumstances that are in place by code, we can have a review panel that does look at student passed the course, they haven't passed the SOL maybe multiple times, but we, as that review panel that's determined by the board, would look at that student's work over time. So it might be classroom assessments, it might be projects that they've completed, it might be written assignments, and then we can look at that quantity of work and the quality of work and decide, based on that, does the student have the understanding, but they just can't pass the SOL? And if that review panel decides that, yes, the student shows and demonstrates that understanding and mastery of the content, as it stands now, the review panel's decision is final. What this policy work group is suggesting is that there be another step, there could be another step, that the decision of the review panel may be appealed to the school board with procedures that are developed by the board. So we have this policy, and as it stands right now, if the panel were to make a decision, that's the final decision, and that's it. So we could say, no, the student doesn't show mastery, and we're not going to award the local credit. Or we could say yes, and they would certainly be happy and move on. But we're suggesting that if needed, there be another appeal process to the school board.
So I want to ask, what would be the most likely scenario that an appeal would be made? Is it because
we didn't award it.
Yes, so that would mean the board would be in the position of overruling
Correct.
the panel that had been assembled. And for that reason, I disagree with adding that new section. I don't think the board should be in a position of overruling the decision of the teachers who are familiar with the academic requirements of the SOL.
Let me ask, is this in the case of like a student that has met all of the other requirements, but may be missing one SOL?
Yes, and they've passed the course.
They've passed the course.
You have to pass the course
They're
and pass
missing
the
one
SOL.
SOL, and the review panel still said you're not graduating.
It's not graduation, it's just a verified credit. They might replace that credit with something else.
Okay.
Their graduation is based on their entire academic record, not a single course.
But I know there have been some graduations that have been withheld because of a failed SOL.
Correct. And because not every course has an associated, not every class or course has an associated end of course SOL. Those that do, to get a verified credit, which those verified credits you must have to graduate. So if I pass the course, but I don't pass the SOL, and I take the SOL 3, 4, 5 times and I still don't pass it, I can't graduate until I pass that SOL and get that verified credit. We can award that verified credit locally, and that's what this policy is saying. We have it now. I don't know, and since I've been in this seat, we've not done this. We work really hard to get those students to pass the SOL. We look at the deficit skills, we work with them, we allow them to take the test, and we actually just had a case this last week where a student didn't graduate. There was, and went to summer school, and there was some a mix-up there, but he came back last week and he took the SOL and he passed it and he got his diploma. So we work very hard to make sure that all of our students can pass those SOLs. So I'm certainly open to conversation, but as it was presented by the committee, the work group, we suggested that we add this next step or for the appeal. Dr. Tinsley.
I do support the addition of the appeal, and here's why. Without going into a bunch of legal terms and boring everybody to death, essentially, a court of appeals does not look at the decision of the lower court and say, oh, we're overturning that decision. We don't agree with the decision they made. They look at the procedure of the lower court and make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed to make sure that the decision was made with all the information necessary to make the decision and done in the right way. I think that's what we could provide to that last layer of, not to overturn, we don't want to play mom against dad, right? But not to overturn the review panel's decision, but to make sure that the review panel's decision was made in a fair and equitable way.
Like checks and balances.
Checks and balances. That's what an appeals court does.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, that's a misunderstanding of
they don't
popular
retry
culture.
the case.
Right? They don't, well, we don't agree with that judge's decision, we change the verdict. That's not what they do. They make sure that things were done.
But again,
The
my
law-
question,
Yeah.
not that, my question is, you know, closer to graduation, this becomes more and more critical.
Yeah.
You know, freshman, sophomore, they got plenty of time, but they're a senior, they've met every requirement, and they got one hill that they just can't climb.
Right.
Somehow we need to be able to help that student. There you go, bro.
Well,
Well-
that's really, but the question is, do we as a board serve as an
Right.
appeal, a layer of appeal for this process?
If that's the way you would like to view it, I would like to see this language amended so that it clarifies that all, our overview is only procedural, not content-based. And the reason this is, a sensitive issue for me is because I've seen at the university level situations in which a student who's clearly underqualified, but somebody wants them to get the degree, and they bend the rules. They get some administrator to overrule the faculty who taught those courses and determine, the subject matter experts determine that this student does not know the material. Somebody finds an administrative way around that, and you graduate a student who's not fully educated. And because I've seen that happen, I don't want that to happen here. Now,
I think
We
that,
can develop our procedures, though. That's.
okay, so if that's the argument, then I would like to see that language refined before it comes back for a vote.
we can certainly do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are the policies that we reviewed and presented to you tonight. They will come back to you on October the 1st for your approval. If you have concerns, suggested changes, questions, please email those to Dr. Edwards, and she will forward those to me, and then we can try to make those changes. I will make sure that Dr. Edwards has a copy of the Virginia Literacy Act to share with you again, as well as the Virginia Code that I referenced in Policy IA, so that you can read that and better understand the pieces there. These are not things that we have the option to implement because it is a direct reflection of the enactment of a new code.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows, I will be out of town October 1st. I will not be here.
Will you be able to join?
I do not know, because I'll be out of the country.
Gotcha.
Dr.
Thank you for your
Edwards.
time.
Sure. Just to add, because you just had a discussion about, what is it, policy IC, what is, the new one you just talked about.
IKG.
There it is. There are, normally when we get new code, there's companion policies that spill over into other policy work groups. So I don't know who's on the HR, Human Resource Policy Work Group, but there is going to be a new proposed policy, GCA, reading specialist, that combines with the one that Ms. Pugh talked about in terms of just the Virginia Literacy Act. And then the governance policy group also will see a new one called AG, which is the literacy plan, which also combines with this. So sometimes you just have to watch out when you're changing language and things, that the companion policies may also need to be refined, and those may be reviewed by different groups because they haven't, I don't think either group has met yet to
No.
go over those.
So meetings of those other policy work groups will get scheduled.
I'm assuming so, yes.
Any other discussion of this item? If not, we'll move on to the next item, which is consideration of a charge to the Superintendent Search Committee, and I'll ask Dr. Tinsley. to-
So I think all 7 members of the committee feel the enormous burden that we have to do our due diligence to make a viable recommendation to the board for the next superintendent. So please know that that committee is committed to doing what we want that committee to do. We did in our first meeting we introduced ourselves to one another, talked about the ethics of the committee, and particularly confidentiality, where confidentiality is needed throughout the process. We talked about the pros and cons of a search committee process, hiring a search committee to do the process, and then talked about our charter. I do want to, I didn't realize that this was just a discussion item. We do need to vote on some particular things tonight, because we need to get going in the search committee. So, waiting another week or two is going to put us a bit behind. I'll just, for information purposes, and then I'll make a motion that this become an action item tonight. I will be, so not yet, I will be making a motion that the board, school board, allow the committee, ad hoc search committee, to start going through getting proposals from soliciting proposals from various search committees. Search firms, right. Sorry, yeah, search firms. To Dr. Wodeska's point, we need to do that through the procurement process in the city, so our committee did decide last night at our first meeting that we do need to go through an RFP process, request for proposals, which would be working with the city to do that. That's the proper way to get proposals like this and to find the firm that we want. We would then bring proposals to this board at the appropriate time with amounts and quotes, services that they would offer, those types of things. And then we would vote on the actual search committee at that time. But I will need to make a motion here for you to give me approval to start that RFP process so that we can start looking for firms. Yes.
Did you mean that you were going to vote on the search committee or the search firm at that time? You just said it.
No, the search committee's formed. We're going to vote just giving us authorization to go out and do the RFP process to gather, solicit proposals from various search firms that we can then bring back to the board at a later time and vote on the particular search firm at that time. But we have step one is we've got to get the proposals in first, obviously.
I'll make a motion to approve your recommendation.
Well, I think I need to make a motion first to make this an action item for tonight. So I move that we move this from a discussion item to an action item.
Second.
Okay, so any discussion on the motion to change this from a discussion item to an action item?
I just want to read it's this whole thing right here, this one page.
The motion is not whether to approve or not.
Right.
The motion is, are we going to decide
Allow them
on
to
it
do an
tonight or
RFP,
not?
request for proposals.
You know, he hasn't,
different
there's
than-
no
Well,
motion
no.
regarding
We're
that
moving
yet.
it-
No, he's just changing.
All I'm doing is we're trying to make it
Changing
an
from
action item. Yeah.
action, from discussion to action. That's all he's
That's all we're
doing.
doing. We will come to, when we're ready to vote on it, we'll discuss the content.
Very good.
So right now, the motion on the floor is to change this to an action item.
Yes, sir.
Any discussion of that motion?
And Darrell seconded, now we're at discussion, yes.
If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so now, we do need to solicit for proposals, so I would like to make the motion that the board authorize the ad hoc superintendent search committee the ability to work with the city to start the request for proposals process, to reach out to search firms and gather proposals, solicit proposals for this committee to consider at a later date.
So a motion has been made. Seconded. Okay. Discussion of the motion is just to authorize the search committee to send out an RFP.
Yes.
Work with the city to send out.
Wait,
Okay.
we'll work with the city to.
Okay, okay. Discussion of that. Now, this motion does not include the text of the charge yet. We haven't come to that yet. We're just authorizing the committee to work with the city to send out an RFP. Any discussion of that? Okay, if not, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connors,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley. Motion
Yes.
carries.
All right. You all should have in board documents then an ad hoc, what's entitled an ad hoc search committee charter. This charter is what we see as our duties throughout this process and how we will help manage this process with search committee, how we will oversee the process and ensure, again, that due diligence is done both by the committee, by the search firm itself, and certainly recommend how we do due diligence as a school board. We made it very clear, though, to the committee that we are an advisory committee only, that final decisions do come from this board. So everybody understands that very clearly. That was part of our ethics discussions.
Motion. or did you make it already?
No, but you, feel free.
Motion.
Second. Before we vote, I'd like to make sure we've all had a chance to look through this
Yes,
and
please.
ask questions about it.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
So, Mr. Jalil, did you have a question about the content of this?
Yes, are you going to have the freedom to add individuals that do not go through the RFP, did you say, process?
Yes.
Or come through the headhunter?
Yes.
It will all eventually come to the board, all the candidates, but you're pulling from,
No. They go
They
to
will
the-
make recommendations to the board.
yes, that's what I'm trying to.
I would like to
Your
ask.
answer is yes. We talked about that.
Yes, but I want to qualify that with a question to Dr. Whitaker. Everybody has to go, I mean, if we go through a request for proposal process, if we have another firm over here that doesn't, we can ask them to propose, but do they have to propose through the RFP process? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Definitely have to, I mean, obviously, they can be solicited, but they will need to submit a proposal.
Okay.
I think he's talking about individuals.
Yes,
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
from.
Yeah,
the-
they can. We
the
talked.
city
Yes,
over
oh,
here.
I see what you're saying.
Is that, you can
Yes.
take that person and
And
put
give
them,
But they
their
have
name
to
to
go
the-
through the headhunt.
the company.
firm that you chose,
Yes.
not necessarily
So
the
when they
city.
contact us, then, or you, then you will refer
Give
them
their
to the
name to
firm
the firm,
so that they
yes.
can vet them.
Absolutely, and we need to do that for transparency purposes, right? And due diligence.
So, for instance, if I decided I wanted to apply to be superintendent.
Sorry, I misunderstood you.
No risk of that happening, I assure you. But if, in that hypothetical situation, if I wanted to pursue that, I would then I need to go through the search firm. I can't just bypass the search firm and go directly to the
Absolutely.
committee. So if I contacted your committee, you would tell me, okay, but you have to go talk to the search firm. Yes.
Marty, we want you to apply. Dr. Day, we want you to apply, but you have to go through the
Okay,
search firm.
that's,
Yes, that's what we're.
clarifying your response to
Yes.
the question.
Is that true?
And what is your deadline for approving the search firms that come to?
It'll be part of the RFP, won't it?
We'll just have to work with the city
Deadline.
on that. I don't know how long that process is going to take, so I can't answer that right now, but certainly keep the board updated as we're going through the process. But we're going to start that RFP, we're going to get with the city post haste and start that process. Yeah.
So I want to ask all the board members to be sure you've looked through the proposed language here and see if you have any questions.
I will say one more thing. This was vetted by Hope Towns, our
Okay,
attorney.
the attorney looked at it.
She vetted it for legal language and any implications. She
So
said it was.
as I
was good.
recall, you have been through similar search process yourself in the past,
Yeah.
and so has Mr. Nellis.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've not been through a search process in a public forum like this.
But in
So-
other contexts.
But other contexts, yes, absolutely, lots of them, yes.
I told someone that I wasn't involved in choosing the search committee at all, and a couple people now have told me that they are not happy that we have majority of elementary schools of all our schools, but there are no current, except for Ms. Lowry, teachers that will represent that particular body. You have other administrative personnel, and they weren't happy with it at all, like very current.
Never gonna get 100%.
Yeah.
Was there a reason why?
Well, I didn't choose, I mean, the committee was chosen by the chair of the board.
chair.
However, I do know from experience that if these search committees get too large, you'll never get anything done. A smaller search committee, and 7 is a good number, but, in most cases, search committees are somewhere between 7, 9, 10 people. And with those numbers, we can't hit every stakeholder. However, and I want to make this clear to the public that might listen to this, we are very much invested in hearing from all the stakeholders. So part of the search process, and we would give this as a mandate to the search firm, is that they will hold public sensing in town halls specifically with the different stakeholders. So they'll go looking for parents, they'll go looking for school teachers, elementary school teachers. They'll go looking for, these different subpopulations, stakeholders, and get their feedback. So we will not leave them out of the conversation.
We will give them the criteria of
Yes.
what we need them to meet so that everybody is heard.
Absolutely.
They don't come and tell us what they're going to do. We let them know what we are looking for and what we want them to do.
And let's be clear, throughout this entire process, this board will be in charge. This firm, whatever firm it is, will be working for us. If we decide along the way we want something different, we want something to change, we want it done, they work for us. And we can stipulate those kinds of changes. So it's not like we just let them go and they run amok and do their thing and give us names 3 months later. That's not how it works. This committee will be a part of this process step by step. We're going to go to all the stakeholder meetings. We're going to be there. We're going to take notes. We're going to bring feedback back to this board. That is what we're committed to doing.
I do see a little similarity with the Dominion 7 MGT, giving us their 4 scenarios and such whatnot and how that worked out. So you have to be circumspect about this.
And I agree with you, and I think that's why this committee, we talked as a committee last night that we are going to be highly involved in this process, as individuals and as a committee. So, but I agree with you. We have to be careful. We can't just take an answer that they give us and say that's the ground truth. We have to vet that, critique that, and we'll have the opportunity to do that. And again, one of the big concerns was, what about local candidates? And I think Dr. Day kind of addressed that with his question. Local candidates, absolutely, we want to hear from them. If you know somebody, we'll put them through the vetting process, put them through the firm, and if they meet all the qualifications, they should rise up to where we see them and can vote on them.
And we weren't on the board when, the MGT and all that went through, so we were at the tail end of it. But the mindset for us on this committee is that we're the boss, not the other way around.
Do you foresee at the end of all this that the candidate or candidates are interviewed by the board as well before voting on them?
Oh, yeah, we'll have an opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
But not in front of the camera.
Yeah.
In closed session.
Be in
Yes.
closed session.
Yes.
So let's be clear, one of the things we talked about in our ethics, and I know people, the night's drawing nigh, but in our ethics discussion, we talked about that as this process proceeds, in the beginning, information is going to be largely sensitive, somewhat confidential, but as we go on in the process, things are going to become much more confidential and less, well, if something's confidential, it is sensitive. It's going to become much more confidential as we go on. In other words, as candidates start to rise to the top and we start to be naming people, we're going to have to take that into consideration because, right, some people might not know that they're applying for a job with Lynchburg City Schools. So we're just got to be sensitive to all that. So when she says we'll be doing interviews, but probably not in front of the camera, that's what she's alluding to.
Other questions? The motion has been made and seconded to approve this language for the search committee charter. Are we ready to vote on this?
Yes.
I hear no objection.
Yes.
Where did Mr. DePaul go?
Restroom.
Should we wait till he's back?
He'll say yes. He's the one that motioned it.
But
Roxy.
Robert Rules of Order, I don't know that we can vote if
Yeah.
the motioner
Yeah.
is not in the room.
Ethically, I would
Let's have
probably.
a
Yeah, I would wait.
Okay, so tell you what, how about if I run through the informational items here?
Okay.
So those are all in
Come
print,
back
he
to
can
vote.
review them for himself while we wait for him to come back. So the informational items, I'll just read through them here. There's an academic success committee meeting tomorrow at 3:30. The next school board meeting is Tuesday, October 1. Finance and Facilities Committee meeting Tuesday, October 8. Also that same day, Academic Success Committee meeting. At same day, same time, Academic Success will be in here, Facilities and Finance will be upstairs. And I wanted to add that that Academic Success Committee meeting, we have invited Danny McCain to come to present, give a presentation to the committee. He's got a group that has been advocating for minority students for a long time. They're very concerned about the achievement gap. And so we've invited them to come give a presentation And we want to invite as many board members as possible to come to that. We know, of course, the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting, people can't because they'll be in a parallel meeting. But it will be an open meeting, and he wants as big an audience as he can get. So that's October 8th at 3:30. The Discipline Committee meeting is October 10th at 3:30.
We have one this week as well.
We haven't got a third person yet, so technically we don't,
Yeah.
until we get a third person.
I need someone to set in for me because I have another meeting.
What day is, what
The
day?
19th.
This Thursday?
Yes.
19th.
It was just, the meeting was just proposed today, so.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able
Okay,
to.
I'll look at that and see if I can possibly fill that spot.
Academic success is the 18th and the 8th, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, tomorrow.
Okay.
and
Yes,
then-
and,
make sure
and
I got it
October
right.
8th, yes. The next school board work session is October 15th. Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations, October 15th, 3:30. And our joint meeting with the City Council is October 22nd at 4.
And if I can get a link for the October 1st, if I can log on, I will try. So if I can get a Zoom link for,
Okay.
Do we have an October 29th? Anything?
probably not if
According to
our
this,
work
October
session is the
22nd, have a
15th.
joint meeting, probably not.
Okay.
Everything in my.
Yeah.
School board meeting across the.
I have a question. Who does the agenda prep for the joint council meeting? Like, what, like, my question was, is it just the CIP on there, or do we put other things on there, or what's going on?
Do we talk about that at the, there's a leadership meeting coming up?
So typically, the mayor, vice mayor, chair, vice chair, myself, city manager, and depending upon whether or not, like deputy city manager, deputy superintendents get together and discuss that agenda.
Okay, because I was thinking CIP and plus what, the search committee, would they be on that agenda? Or is that some other time we talk about it?
Ask me that again, I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure if the joint council meeting included the CIP, but would it also include the search, since we need to ask for city collaboration with that? No?
No, I don't think.
Okay,
That
all right,
would be
that's what I was
the-
curious about. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so the reason is, so city procurement is also our procurement. That was a consolidated function, so it's just simply using them.
So now that we have
okay.
approval,
City council doesn't need to do it.
so now that I have approval to go, I can go.
Yeah.
Okay, all
Okay,
right, cool.
so now that we're all back at the table, we delayed voting on the search committee charter until Mr. DePaul was back. So we are now prepared to vote on the motion to approve the search committee charter. Would you please
Mr.
call the-
Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, I think that completes our agenda. Meeting adjourned.